Chapter 668. The dazzling light from the cannon fire illuminated the wasteland where CGS was located. The grenades that constantly rose into the air smashed down on the defensive line built by CGS like meteors, stirring up waves of debris mixed with mud and concrete. Amidst the wreckage, the mobile engineers who had already entered combat positions the moment the battle started were working hard to fire 30mm machine gun bullets into the distant area where enemies were most likely to be present. However, even if the number of mobile engineers in CGS was quite substantial, in the face of the dense barrage formed by the grenades that almost occupied the entire sky and the bullets that swept across the wasteland, the only thing the young CGS soldiers could do was to try their best to maintain their barrage and defensive line. TSK. So what if you're rich? You're just randomly smashing shells on our heads. Located at the front of CGS defensive line, Sino, who was on duty, was the first to appear here and also gained a foothold here. However, even Sino, who took the lead, was afraid that he would have to face a shocking fact. Sino, the enemy is here. Among the mobile engineers that were slightly behind, the enemy attack signal flare had interrupted their training for 3 days. With his keen intuition, he had already found traces of the enemy in the thick smoke, only to see a purple-brown painted NK-17 mobile engineer with an unexpected icon on the side that was much larger than the TK-53 used by CGS rushed out of the thick smoke with the roar of the engine. Such a shocking discovery was naturally sent back by Team Sinuo as soon as possible. However, this shocking fact might lead to some unexpected results. A TK-53 mobile engineer that rushed out of Naku suddenly stopped. There was no other reason. In front of this mobile engineer, a man and a woman were standing in the middle of the road, forcing Eugene Sevenstark, who was driving the mobile engineer, to make the decision to brake. Hey, Olga, didn't you make arrangements for our VIP? Eugene, who was already a little unhappy with Olga, immediately attacked. No, wait. Eugene, our VIP seems to have something to say to us. Olga, who was standing at the rear hatch, looked up at the VIP who unexpectedly appeared here. 2 distinguished guests. The base is currently under attack. Please take refuge as soon as possible. Just leave it to us. Olga's reaction was natural and proper. After deciding on the escort mission, Olga was indeed qualified to interfere with the actions of the man and woman. However, the man and woman were not the kind of people who would obediently accept protection. Lei Minkai shifted his gaze to the TK-53 parked in front of him. At this moment, the mobile engineers were a little different from the colorful training bullets they saw during the day. Overall, there was a hint of desolation. No, Captain Olga, we did not come here on a whim. We just hope to provide some help in this battle. Rei Minkai's words stunned Olga, and he almost didn't react. No, Sir Rei Minkai, you must be joking. How could our CGS allow our esteemed guest to take the risk to join this battle? Suddenly, Olga's vision blurred, and the man and woman in front of the TK-53 mobile engineers were one less person. Can this prove that I have the ability to protect myself on a battlefield? Captain Olga. The next second, Rei Minkai's voice came from behind Olga. What? When? Olga was stunned and turned around abruptly. He saw Rei Minkai, who was standing in front of the mobile engineers, but who was standing behind him. Is this enough? Captain Olga, I may not have much confidence in other things, but I'm still very confident that I can protect myself on the battlefield. Looking down at Olga condescendingly, Rei Minkai smiled confidently. Olga's expression froze for a moment. Then he showed a confident smile, but it was more of a forced smile. Is that so? Since Sir Rei Minkai said so, then, do you also want us to provide you with a mobile engineer? Rei Minkai raised his eyebrows and looked back at Naku. There were still a few mobile engineers that hadn't been activated. Well, that's good too. But, Captain Olga, are you prepared for your escape route to be cut off? What? Olga's eyes flashed, and then he remembered the message just now. Is it Lars Horn? What do you think? With a meaningful smile, Rei Minkai jumped down from the mobile engineer and met up with Lux, who made way for him. Looking at the mobile engineer that had restarted and sped out of the garage, Lei Mingkai turned his head to look at Lux, who had her beautiful pink hair tied up high in a bun. At the same time, she had also changed into a casual outfit that was convenient for movement. Lux, I'm counting on you. Okay. The tacit understanding between the two did not require too many words. When Lux took the initiative to help Ray Mingkai knew that his dissuasion would not have any effect. Moreover, Ray Mingkai was more surprised that Lux would take the initiative to suggest the idea of driving the mobile engineer. Although there were many doubts in his mind, Ray Mingkai understood that the Lux Klein standing beside him now was not the Lux Klein from Seed. Why are the two esteemed guests? The serviceman uncle who was packing up and preparing to move to another post turned his head and saw Ray Mingkai and Lux walking into Neku. Especially when he saw the serious-looking Lux, he could not help but take a few steps back and widen the distance between them. Sorry, let us borrow this mobile engineer. Ray Mingkai nodded to the serviceman, Nadi, and took the lead to jump into the mobile engineer. He then turned around and extended his right hand to Lux. Hey, this thing is not something that ordinary people could drive. Nadi was stunned for a moment and subconsciously tried to dissuade Ray Mingkai and Lux. No, right now, we need this mobile engineer. Please allow us to use it. Lux, who was pulled into the mobile engineer by Ray Mingkai, turned around and looked down at Nadi condescendingly. A wave of pressure that could not be refused enveloped him, causing Nadi to swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Please be careful. Without hesitation, nor did he have any thoughts of refusing. The moment Lux mentioned that she wanted to use the mobile engineer, Nadi knew that he could not refuse Lux. Wait. However, just as Lux was about to enter the cockpit of the mobile engineer, Nadi suddenly shouted. Immediately after, there was the sound of tools being turned over. Found it. Your Excellency, catch. An air tank that had been deliberately wiped was thrown into Ray Mingkai's hands by Nadi. Those guys usually don't pay much attention to cleanliness, so it's inevitable that there will be Nadi, who was a little embarrassed, looked a little funny, but Ray Mingkai acknowledged his intentions. Thanks, Uncle Nadi. It's just that we don't need this thing. The moment he casually threw the air tank that seemed to be an air freshener back to Nadi, a lightning-like sound rang out in the cockpit of the mobile engineer. Then, a trace of fresh air, like after a rainstorm, quietly spread out from the cockpit of the mobile engineer and filled Nadi's nostrils. Is it raining? No matter how confused Nadi was, Ray Mingkai and Lux would not explain because of this. The lightning-like sound, just now, was undoubtedly made by State Zero. It was just for the sake of cleaning the cockpit of the mobile engineer. Lux, can you do it? Ray Mingkai, who entered the mobile engineer from the rear hatch, glanced at Lux, who was fiddling with the instruments in front. Yes, it's a little unfamiliar, but it won't be a problem. As if to verify Lux's words, the TK-53 mobile engineer rushed out of Neku under Lux's control in less than a few minutes. That quick and agile maneuver was not any worse than the pilots that Nadi knew. It might even be slightly better than the pilots that Nadi knew. This is truly a strange guest. Nadi touched the back of his head, then hastened to pack his things. He had more important things to do. Da-da-da. The roar of the 30mm machine gun became the main melody of the battlefield the moment Lars Horn's NK-17 entered the firing range. Accompanying this melody was the large-caliber rifle that the NK-17 was equipped with. Even though the rate of fire of the NK-17's large-caliber machine gun was not as fast as the 30mm machine gun that could fire 3 shots in a row, its lethality was incomparable to the 30mm machine gun. The NK-17's large-caliber rifle only needed 1 or 2 shots to blow up the CGS's TK-53. On the other hand, the NK-53's 30mm machine gun couldn't do any effective damage to the NK-17 from a long distance. Furthermore, Lars Horn's NK-17 swaggered in the same way as CGS NK-53's. They pulled out a horizontal formation and slowly pushed towards CGS defense line. In a wave like smoke the NK-17 group that was getting closer to the defense line made the young CGS soldiers feel pressured. In an instant, the communication channel was filled with screams one after another. There are even screams of mental breakdown from Zero. Class 3. Reinforcements will be here soon. Hold on a little longer. Class 5. The attack is too loose. We will be scattered by the enemy. Olga's voice came into his ears, and the image of the defense line being attacked by the NK-17 group appeared in front of his eyes. Kai, are we just going to watch? Lakis moved her hands, and her expression showed that she was eager to try. In the test drive, just now, Lakis' control of the mobile engineer surprised Ray Minkai. Perhaps this was the advantage of being an adjuster. No, wait a little longer. Ray Minkai's hands danced back and forth on the keyboard, and he entered a series of commands into the mobile engineer's communication system. Even though Ray Minkai had never come into contact with the mobile engineer's system language, with the help of State Zero, this was just a small matter. I didn't expect you to go and get such a small toy when you can't use the Freedom Gouda for the time being. Isn't it good to just watch from the side? State Zero's yawning voice echoed in Ray Minkai's mind. No, just watching isn't in line with my next plan. Ray Minkai's right index finger tapped hard, and all the commands were entered at that moment. Then, with the mobile engineer that Ray Minkai was in as the center, the command was sent to the NK-53 mobile engineer that was fighting on the battlefield at that moment. Beep beep. The moment a series of notifications sounded, it attracted Eugene's attention. K1. Eugene did not forget to shout out in surprise. Hey, Olga, are you the one behind this? No, it's not. Before Olga could clarify that she did not do anything, Sino's voice followed closely. Olga, what are you doing? What S1? What's the meaning of this? Quiet. I'm transmitting battle orders now. If you don't want to die, if you want to win this battle, focus on completing my battle orders. The chaotic communication was suddenly interrupted by a sharp and familiar voice. This voice. Olga was shocked and subconsciously turned around to look at the door of CGS. There, a TK-53 mobile engineer was parked. And on top of this mobile engineer, a man was standing there, overlooking the battlefield. Captain Olga, are you prepared to have your escape route cut off? The same question was asked again. Olga's reaction was the same as always. Yes. I've already made up my mind. Then, esteemed guest, are you going to command us in battle? If you want to ensure the survival of most of your comrades in the situation of victory. The moment Ray Minkai's gaze met with Olga's in midair, Olga showed a sarcastic smile. Are you saying that many of us will die? Isn't that the case? Ray Minkai's gaze looked at the other end of the battle line. There, several scattered mobile engineers were covered in flames. From the looks of it, the pilot inside was most likely dead. Olga, don't listen to his nonsense. How can an outsider know how to command us in battle? Eugene was the first to object. He was already unhappy with Olga, and adding another person to command him on top of that, Eugene thought it was ridiculous. D1, you're charging too far ahead. Immediately, turn right, go straight for 3 seconds, turn left, and retreat. At this time, when Ray Minkai's voice sounded again, a scene that surprised Sino happened on the battlefield. A minute ago, the young soldier Danji, who volunteered to fight and was sent to Sino's side by Olga, was in a rush to defeat the enemy. In the heat of the moment, he tried to shorten the distance of the battle to achieve the goal of killing the enemy, but he was almost shot by the NK-17 with quick reaction. If it weren't for Ray Minkai's timely command in that critical moment of life and death, and the instinctive reaction of Danji, who was called D1, Danji's ending would have been either death or injury. Under Ray Minkai's command, the moment the lightning-quick maneuver was completed, a purple-brown figure appeared in front of Danji. It was the enemy. It was Lars Horn's NK-17. D1 attack. After 3 seconds, quickly retreat. Tat-a-tat-it. The 30mm machine gun's ultra-close range fire tore through the NK-17's armor, and at the same time, it also tore apart Olga's hesitation and Eugene's resistance. Chapter 669. It's a success. Danji, who had just smashed the enemy into smithereens, had his hands trembling slightly and his voice was filled with disbelief. In front of him was the burning wreckage of the mech, and the cold touch of the trigger was still clearly visible. Danji seemed to be unable to accept the fact that he had indeed killed an enemy. D1, don't be in a daze. Follow S1's movements. The battle is not over yet. Kai's voice woke Danji up from his daze. Ah, yes. No matter how Olga and Eugene reacted, Danji seemed to have accepted Kai's command. Looking at the mobile engineers following Kai's instructions and following behind the TK-53 piloted by Sino, Olga's face did not look good. But in the end, he still admitted that Kai's command did have some skill. Honorable guest, can you really command us to win this battle? This battle where we are treated as abandoned pawns? The meaning of Olga's words was very clear. Kai smiled. Abandoned pawns? That might not be the case. Isn't it? Captain Olga, didn't you also leave a card up your sleeve? The hidden meaning of the two's words made Eugene very confused. Hey, Olga, what are you guys doing? If you want to make a decision, hurry up. Lars Horn seems to have added more troops. Olga looked back and saw that Lars Horn had indeed thrown the reserve team into this battle. Then, the decision was made. Then, honorable guest, the third team, including me, will be in your hands. Okay, K1, go forward. S1, lead your men to follow K1 and provide cover. Since Olga was so tactful, Kai naturally wouldn't let this chess piece of the king become an abandoned piece. The next second, two TK-53 painted in white and blue respectively rushed out from the CGS gate, crossing left and right at high speed and rushed into the battlefield. Oh, just in time. B11, your mission is to do your best to charge into the enemy formation and wreak havoc. Kai stared at the two mobile engineers in the dust and said in a clear voice, Was it that person? Is he giving us orders? Inside the blue TK-53, Akihiro looked at his code name in surprise. I don't know, but Olga said that I have to listen to him, so I will listen to his orders. Compared to the confused Akihiro, the three suns and moons were much more straightforward. Since Kai had given him the order to attack freely, then everything would be done according to the three suns and moons' wishes. Thus, a white figure as fast as lightning shuttled back and forth between Lars Horn and the NK-17. Every time the white TK-53 closed in on the NK-17, the 30mm machine gun of the white TK-53 roared. Da-da-da. In the roar of the machine gun, the NK-17 that relied on its large size and thick armor was like a fragile piece of paper being harvested by the white TK-53 piloted by the three suns and moons. On the other side, Akihiro's blue TK-53 was the same. Not willing to fall behind the three suns and moons, Akihiro also adopted the same offensive strategy. Accelerate the movement, shorten the distance, and then destroy the NK-17 in an extremely short or even close way. Very good. The three suns and Akihiro rushed in. When Olga saw the three suns and Akihiro enter the battlefield, the situation of the entire battlefield suddenly reversed. Moreover, the moment the situation changed, several red signal flares suddenly rose from the back of the CGS base, as if they were telling everyone on the battlefield a certain signal. The moment the red signal flares rose to the highest altitude, the NK-17 troops that were attacking the CGS base began to split into two groups. One group stayed in place to attack the CGS base, and the other group went to the back of the CGS base. It seemed like they didn't want to let anyone in the base go. No, don't be happy too early. Captain Olga. The division of the NK-17 troops was expected by Kai, but the real highlight was yet to come. The originally one-sided battle situation was reversed in an instant. This made Orlis, who was entrusted with an important task by Lars Horn and Mars Branch Chief Connor Conrad, who wanted to show off in front of his former commanding officer, very dissatisfied. Originally, Orlis despised his former commanding officer and current subordinate, Kronk Chant's inflexibility to the extreme. Therefore, with this great opportunity, this commander who was entrusted with a heavy responsibility couldn't wait to slap Kronk Chant's inflexible face with facts on the spot. Useless. Useless. Really useless. I've had enough. Seeing that the attack of the mobile engineers and infantry was thwarted, he drove his beloved machine, the Gretz commander, out from the other side of the battlefield where Lars Horn and Mars Branch was located. He tore through the billowing smoke and rushed to the bottom of the hill where the fighting was going on. Trash. Trash. A bunch of trash. It's just a rundown base, and they spent so much time on it. Everyone in the mobile engineers will have their salaries cut. The irritable voice was played without reservation by the external sound device. Coupled with the oppressive feeling brought by the huge MS that was several times larger than the mobile engineers, everyone on Olga's side responded differently. Some were shocked, some were confused, but most of them silently went back into the cockpit of the mobile engineers, ready to face a more intense, but also more dangerous battle. Lux, go! Ray Minkai didn't have any intention of getting involved in the battle between the mobile engineers. Now, as the protagonist of this offensive and defensive battle, Ray Minkai needed to take the initiative to attack. Otherwise, Olga, who had just acknowledged his command, would have some negative comments. Even Eugene, the rebellious person, would clamor for him to shut up. If this really happened, Ray Minkai's old face would have nowhere to go. Understood. Lux was clear about the situation Ray Minkai was facing. Therefore, under her control, the TK-53 rushed down the hill and went straight to the Commander Glaze. The roaring engine of the TK-53, as well as the flying dust, was instantly captured by the radar of the Commander Glaze. The sound of the enemy's attack also made Oryx, who was cursing his own soldiers, look over. What? It's just a mobile engineer, and you dare to attack us? Oryx stared at the mobile engineer rushing down the hill. While feeling great disdain, an unknown anger rose from his heart. Go to hell! In the irritable yell, the Commander Glaze raised the 120mm rifle in his hand and fired 3 consecutive shots at the TK-53 that rushed halfway up the hill. Boom! 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 The moment the screeching sound of the cannonball tearing through the air, 3 consecutive explosions suddenly covered half of the hill. The high dust and the hot and pungent smell of the explosion wantonly attacked the nostrils of Olga, Eugene, and the others who had not yet been able to catch up. Looking at the terrifying attack that was able to change the hillside beyond recognition with just 3 consecutive shots, Eugene was stunned on the spot. What kind of joke is this? How is it possible for us to defeat MS just by relying on our shabby mobile engineers? The sound of the explosion gradually faded away. While the CGS side was shocked by the 3 consecutive shots of the Commander Glaze, Kronk Chant and Eindalton, who were ordered to follow behind Oryx, piloted their own Glaze to the back of the Commander Glaze. Oryx, why did you shoot? Our goal is... Shut up. Kronk, if you want to complete the mission, then the recovery work will be handed over to you. I'm full of anger right now. Don't force me. Kronk, right now I'm a commander. Oryx yelled at Kronk loudly, and even used the commander's name to suppress Kronk. Kronk, who was secretly called old-fashioned by Oryx, shut his mouth as expected. Ein, you too. Don't hinder me. After yelling at Kronk and Ein, Oryx's Commander Glaze raised the 120mm rifle in his hand again. Their target was still the halfway up the mountain where the smoke had yet to dissipate. No matter how bad Oryx's character was during the shooting just now, he did not feel that the attack launched by his Commander Glaze had the possibility of hitting the enemy, even if the hillside was already submerged in the violent bombardment. How is this possible? In front of him was the slowly moving crosshair that could not lock onto the target. Oryx's brows gradually furrowed. Boom! Suddenly, in the gradually dissipating smoke, there was a sound that sounded like an explosion. Everyone's attention was drawn to it. Boom! Just as everyone's attention was focused on the smoke that was about to dissipate, a figure appeared out of thin air. It was a mobile engineer. The moment this figure appeared, the faces of Olga and the others suddenly became interesting. Without a doubt, from the visual, from the radar's identification signal, the mobile engineer that rushed out of the smoke was the mobile engineer driven by Ray Minkai and Lakis. They did not lose their lives under the attack of the Commander Glaze. Instead, they reappeared in front of Olga and the others in almost perfect condition. Bang! After the TK-53 mobile engineer rushed out of the huge crater and landed heavily on the ground, the moment the buffer device took effect, it burst out with its full speed and attacked the Commander Glaze again. K1, S1, B1, A1. The battle plan has been transmitted to your terminals. Execute according to the plan. B1, follow me. Amidst the billowing dust, Lei Minkai and Lakis mobile engineer troops charged straight for Glaze's commander. Quick, keep up. It's just a few MS. We still have a chance of winning. After Olga glanced at the plan sent by Ray Minkai, she had to admit that in terms of tactical arrangements, Ray Minkai's plan was more comprehensive than her own, and it was more targeted and had a higher possibility of success. Understood. As soon as the ruthless Mitsuyu heard Olga's words, they rushed up on the spot and quickly followed Ray Minkai's footsteps. Looking at the dust and the mobile engineer that rushed over again, Or's anger soared to a new height on the spot. The raging flames of anger finally ignited Olis' rationality. Boom! The hiss of the 120mm rifle sounded again, but it did not crush the locked target into pieces. It only created a huge mud pit near the target. Boom! Boom! Although it could avoid most of the 120mm rifle's attacks, the shock wave set off by the bullets fired was difficult to avoid. In the cockpit that was constantly shaking, and from time to time, the shock waves of the explosions would emit sorrowful cries. Lakis gritted her teeth slightly, but her hands did not make the slightest mistake. She transformed the TK-53 into a fish swimming unimpeded in the tide of explosions, nimbly and quickly rushing to the vicinity of Gretz's commander type. Duh, duh, duh. The moment the distance between the two was shortened, Ray Minkai, who controlled the fire control, pulled the trigger on the spot. The bullets of the 30mm machine gun equipped with the TK-53 bombarded the Commander Glaze's heel, knee, and other vital joints at close range. Ray Minkai knew very well that the 30mm machine gun of the TK-53 could not penetrate Glaze's armor. Therefore, in order to grasp the victory of this battle in his hands, he needed to use some skills. Boom, boom, boom. The bombardment of the 30mm machine gun constantly set off bursts of explosions on the knees and heels of the Commander Glaze, which also allowed Ors to see Ray Minkai's intention on the spot. However, even if he had seen through Ray Minkai's intention, he could not destroy the mobile engineer driven by Lakis on the spot in a short period of time. You're just playing tricks. You're just some lowly insects. What's the use of facing my Glaze? Just as mentioned earlier, Orla's arrogant clamor had already been broadcasted throughout the entire battlefield by the sound amplifiers. So noisy. This person, Ray Minkai and Lakis, did not react to this, but their actions were seen by Three Suns and Moon. I see. I understand. After a little observation, Three Suns and Moon already understood the intention of Ray Minkai and Lakis the moment they saw a crack appear on the knee of the Commander Glaze. MS was not invincible. It just depended on one's courage, skill, and luck. Obviously, in addition to the first two, the latter was in the hands of Ray Minkai. Duh, duh. In this cat-and-mouse game, or perhaps a mouse playing with a cat, the Commander Glaze's movements suddenly froze, and then an ear-piercing cry sounded. Squeak, ka, ka. The MS that brought a huge pressure suddenly froze. Then it inexplicably fell down with a loud bang. Boom! In the sound of the heavy MS falling to the ground, Ors was stunned, Crank was stunned, and Ein was even more stunned. However, Ray Minkai still remained calm. This was because Grez's fall was already within his calculations. Three Suns and Moon. Attack Glaze's cockpit. Quick! The moment the order was given, the white TK-53 tore through the billowing smoke, raised its 30mm machine gun, and aimed at the neck of the Commander Glaze type. The cockpit was not protected by thick armor, but it was protected by a layer of protection that could not be considered armor. The Commander Glaze type opened fire at the cockpit. Da-da-da-da-da. Amidst the flickering flames, the bullets created a terrifying stream of metal, dragging Orlis, who had instinctively raised his arms to protect himself, into the boundless darkness. Chapter 670. The muzzle light of the 30mm machine gun quietly extinguished. Ors, who was still cursing the CGS people, also extinguished all his life signs. Even if his curses were so loud just now, it couldn't change the fact that the cockpit of the Commander Grays was turned into a hornet's nest by the white TK-53's attack. K. Lieutenant Kronk. As a new pilot under Lars Horn, Ein shuddered and quickly called for the experienced Kronk. Ein's anxious call was naturally heard by Kronk. It was just that he couldn't believe his eyes. He did not expect that the MS, which had an overwhelming advantage, would be defeated by two mobile engineers that were undoubtedly equivalent to iron coffins in an instant. In such a situation, even as a veteran, Kronk couldn't react in time. Lieutenant Kronk. Lieutenant Kronk. Ein's call was still ongoing. Besides, there were already clouds of dust rising near Grays in Klonk and Ein. It seemed that because Rei Minkai and Mitsuki successfully defeated Grays, Olga, Eugene, Akihiro, and others also saw the dawn of victory in this battle. Everyone, although I don't want to accept it, the tactics of the distinguished guest are indeed useful. Then, let's go together. Roger. Roger. Under Olga's lead, the four mobile engineers advanced at high speed in a crisscrossing manner, flanking Crank and Ein's Gretz from all directions. Ein's heart couldn't help but beat a few beats faster when he saw that. Lieutenant Kronk. Seeing that Kronk didn't respond for a long time, Ein gritted his teeth and changed his movements. The Grays he was driving immediately raised the 120mm rifle in its hand and pointed at the mobile engineers driven by Olga and Eugene. It had to be said that Ein's luck was really good. He was able to unintentionally choose the mobile engineer that Olga was in. Boom! However, the moment he fired the first bullet, Ein's Gray's following attack was stopped. Stop! Ein! It was Kronk. Crank, who finally reacted, first controlled his Grez to stop Ein, then looked at the seemingly inconspicuous mobile engineer parked in front of the Grez commander. He knew that all the changes would probably start from the moment this mobile engineer appeared. In other words, it was the culprit that caused the current situation. Ein, retreat. Crank stared at the mobile engineer and didn't care about Olga's attack on his Grez. Even if Olga and the others were inspired by Rei Minkai and focused their attacks on Gray's joints, they were still unable to do anything. Unfortunately, the four mobile engineers, including Olga's mobile engineer, were unable to accurately and quickly paralyze Gray's movements like Rei Minkai had done earlier. Instead, they were forced to retreat a long distance by Gray's, who was driven by Crank. Boom! 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 The 120mm rifle in Gretz's hand opened fire again. However, it wasn't aimed at the mobile engineers. Instead, it was just enough to force Olga and the others to retreat. Ein. What are you waiting for? Retreat. Kronk called out for Ein. No, Lieutenant Crank. We can't retreat like this. Ein didn't understand Crank's cautiousness. He only knew that if they retreated like this, then his mission would fail. It was just a few mobile engineers. Why would they let a team with 3 Grays choose to retreat? Ein didn't understand at all. Therefore, Ein didn't retreat. Instead, he drove his Grays and rushed toward the Commander Grays that had already fallen. Yes, Ein's target was the mobile engineer that Lame Minkai and Lakis were piloting. Hey, that MS is trying to kill our VIP. Stop him. Eugene, who was the closest, shouted for support on the spot. However, he was almost hit by the GR-H01 battle axe in Ein's left hand. Hey, Eugene, be careful. Our mobile engineers aren't as sturdy as these MS. Olga, who got back to the rear cockpit in time, patted the mobile engineer's protective panel. I know, but we can't let it attack our VIP, Eugene shouted anxiously, but he was unable to catch up to Grez, who had begun leaping towards Lei Minkai and Lakis amidst the flying mud and rocks. No, our esteemed guest won't be killed so easily. Compared to Eugene's anxiety, Olga said this sentence calmly. Moreover, Olga's sharp eyes looked from under her dart-shaped bangs to the screen in front of her. The mobile engineer TK-53 that was under the shadow of death brought by Gray's battle axe. Da-da-da-da. Amidst the roar of the engine, the white mobile engineer jumped up from the fallen Commander Gretz and welcomed the battle axe with a fearless attitude. At this moment, the 30mm machine gun's fire stung Ein's eyes as if it was mocking him. Don't get in the way. It's obvious. It's obvious that things are so simple. Why are you resisting us? Grays turned his left hand and used his wide side to knock down the white mobile engineer's attack. At the same time, he pushed forward and swatted the white mobile engineer away like a fly. Bang! In the loud sound of the impact between the metal, Grays, who was about 18 meters tall, landed in front of the brown-yellow mobile engineer. You were the one who commanded the battle before. As long as we get rid of you, our mission will be completed. Ein's eyes were burning with anger. His Grays suddenly raised his battle axe and fiercely chopped down at the target. This attack was as fast as thunder, leaving no time for Zhao Hong, who had caught up, to rescue. However, this attack was bound to be able to split open the mobile engineer's fragile armor, but it didn't scare Ray Minkai, and even Lakis couldn't be scared by it, because a flash of light appeared above the sky. The moment the scream tore through the sky, a flash of light, like a punishment from the gods, struck straight at Grays. Boom! This was a shocking change in the blink of an eye. This was the instant change in Ein's eyes that would kill Ray Minkai and Lakis. Gray's battle axe fell. But the sharp blade of the battle axe didn't hit the mobile engineer. Instead, under Ein's astonished gaze, it fell powerlessly, splashing a cloud of dust. What happened? Just as this question emerged from the bottom of his heart, Ein's consciousness fell into darkness under a violent impact. I didn't know what happened, but Crank witnessed the moment Ein's Grays was split open by the lightning that fell from the sky. The dust gradually settled. An 8-meter-long sword with a white blade and body appeared at the feet of Ein's Grays. It was the real culprit that made Gray's battle axe attack futile. A long sword fell from the sky. Not only did it cut off Gray's left arm, but it also made Ein's HP drop to the lowest point. Get out of the way. I have no intention of continuing to fight with you. In order to save Ein, Crank no longer hesitated and directly drove his Grays to rush forward. But unexpectedly, he was besieged by multiple mobile engineers led by the white mobile engineer. To be honest, compared to the previous battle, the way Crank, as a veteran, responded made the besieging team of white mobile engineers feel a lot of pressure. If they were careless, they would be in danger of being blown up on the spot. TCH, this guy is different from the two MS just now. Akihiro drove his blue TK-53 and after narrowly avoiding a 120mm rifle bullet, he broke out in cold sweat. Continue. The three suns and moon didn't feel anything, but the idea of shooting down Grays became even hotter. Even so, the three suns and moon's obstruction was ultimately unsuccessful. Grays only needed to jump a few times to reach his destination. Looking at the white blade that fell from the sky, he also looked at the mobile engineer that stopped beside Gray's commander. It was inevitable for Crank to have some thoughts in his mind, but the rational him did not hesitate to retreat with Gretz, who had his left arm chopped off. In the roar of the Ahab furnace operating at full power, the two Grays quickly disappeared in front of the CGS and others. The remaining troops of Lars Horn, who participated in this attack, also followed closely behind. Looking at the enemies that gradually disappeared on the edge of the wilderness, Olga and others couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Some people even directly collapsed on the ground and didn't want to continue to move. What is that longsword? The excitement brought by the fierce battle gradually subsided, and Olga's eyes couldn't help but look at the long sword that fell from the sky. From the specifications, this wasn't a weapon used by humans, and it wasn't even a weapon used by the mobile engineers. That's right, this was the weapon used by the MS. However, on this battlefield, other than the three grays, there was only the one in the deepest part of the CGS base. No, it can't be that. Even at the beginning of the battle, Olga had asked his old man to make preparations for it for the sake of safety, but in fact, the body was far from ready. Not to mention, it had the possibility of launching the attack that was like a heavenly weapon descending from the sky. If that's the case, Olga's bangs slowly fell down, covering Olga's eyes as she looked at the mobile engineer beside the long sword. Is this Free Gao Da's sword? Holding Kai's right hand, Lux walked out of the slightly hot TK-53 cockpit and looked at the long sword. She actually felt a sense of familiarity. Yes, fortunately, I made it in time. Kai nodded. At that critical moment, Free Gao Da was finally ready. Moreover, under the control of State Zero, he threw out the blade in time and knocked down Gray's battle axe. Is that so? Then my work here is done. Lux stretched slightly, then untied her hair. Her pink long hair fluttered in the wind, and her charming face and valiant figure that had just walked out of a fierce battlefield created a strong visual impact. This scene caused a group of young soldiers who had gathered around to size up the long sword that had fallen from the sky to be stunned on the spot. Cough, cough. What are you all doing here? Go clean up the battlefield and be on guard. The enemy won't leave so easily. Go quickly. Olga's coughing sound followed closely, waking these young soldiers one by one, and they quickly scattered in all directions amidst the cursing sound. Captain Olga, aren't you going to clean up the mess? Kai glanced at the young soldiers who scattered in all directions, then looked at Olga meaningfully. Olga's gaze froze, and she already knew what Kai meant. I'll deal with these things later. But, as she spoke, Olga's gaze couldn't help but drift to the long sword. That's my thing. But as for what it is, it's not time to tell you yet. Kai simply admitted part of the truth, but he kept the most important fact. For Olga, this part of the truth was enough. Understand. Your Excellency Kai, thank you very much for your help. I hope that after this matter is settled, we'll have a chance to continue talking. Just as she turned to leave, Olga suddenly added another sentence. Your Excellency Kai, if you're interested, I can lend you this mobile engineer for a period of time. Kai raised his eyebrows, revealing a trace of smile. Is this okay? You know, this is CGS's property. Olga shrugged her shoulders, and the corner of her mouth raised slightly. There's nothing to be okay about. When old man Maruba abandoned us and ran away, CGS might have ceased to exist. After saying that, Olga waved her hand and walked towards her mobile engineer. Facing the breeze that still had the smell of gunpowder, Lux's pink hair fluttered gently. Her pair of lively eyes gazed at the young soldiers who were cleaning up the battlefield. Probably, they've already thought through some things. Yes, they have. But the road ahead of them might become more difficult. Lux looked at Kai. Her eyes were filled with the light of seeing through everything. In fact, is this also your plan? Kai. Kai didn't deny it, but also didn't admit it. He just sighed. I just gave him a push in passing. Lux, even if we didn't appear, they would still make the same choice. Yes, even if the two of them didn't interfere, this battle would still end with Olga's side's victory. It was just that the end of this battle was different. Barbados, who was supposed to be the main character of this battle, was still sleeping. Instead, a group of mobile engineers under the command of Kai won this somewhat unbelievable victory. Lux carefully observed Kai's expression, but she couldn't find any flaws in Kai's expression. Hence, Lux chuckled. Then, what should we do next? My night. Chapter 671. On the hillside, after the battle, there were mobile engineers that had been burnt to ashes. On the wreckage engulfed by the flames, there were more or less wreckage left. The thin and weak young soldiers gathered in groups of 2 or 3 in their respective areas, cleaning up the wreckage as much as possible, especially when they discovered that their companions were still breathing. These young soldiers, who still had a trace of joy on their faces after surviving the battle, burst into a series of exclamations on the spot. They immediately threw themselves into the intense rescue work. "Push harder! Hurry! Hurry up! This guy is still alive! Hurry up and get more people!" The youths tried their best to push the wreckage that still had a trace of heat remaining, trying to rescue their companion, who was trapped at the bottom and still had a breath of life left. However, the wreckage that was almost twisted into a ball did not budge at all. It did not move at all because of the youth's hard push. "Damn it! Hurry up! Hurry up and get more people!" Ryder screamed for help, but the people who could rush to the rescue had already arrived. The rest of the people threw themselves into the rescue of their companions. "Akihiro, hurry up and help!" Olga and Akihiro worked together to push away a piece of armor that was full of holes in front of them, then looked back at Akihiro. However, Akihiro was stunned in place. His expression was filled with shock, as if he had seen something unbelievable. "Hey, Akihiro, did you hear that?" Olga frowned and tried to raise his voice to make Akihiro come back to his senses. Well, I don't think I need to go over." Akihiro raised his finger and pointed at Ryder's side. "What?" Olga was stunned. Before he could turn around to look at Ryder, he heard Ryder scream. The teenager's scream was full of fear and shock. Then there was a sharp sound of metal being destroyed. Squeak! Boom! The sound of the metal plate being heavily thrown on the ground attracted everyone's attention, including Ryder. The teenager's eyes were full of shock and fear. They subconsciously raised their muzzles, as well as the white figure that didn't care about the muzzles pointed at them. It was minding its own business and tearing apart the wreckage of the teenager who was on his last breath. What is that thing? It was taller than an adult. Its whole body was snow white, and its muscles were clearly visible and full of power. There was also a long tail, as well as the long white hair around its head. It was definitely a beast. But other than that, Olga and the others couldn't accurately call out the name of the beast that suddenly appeared in the post-war ruins. It's eating people. The beastly posture that they had never seen or heard of before caused the youths to be extremely terrified, especially when they saw the pile of ruins that they couldn't push away no matter how hard they tried, being torn apart by the strange and mysterious beast as if they were chopping vegetables. A terrifying thought silently emerged in the hearts of the youths. "Don't move. Don't eat our partners." In fear, the teenagers who raised their muzzles trembled, but they still pulled the trigger in fear that their partners would be eaten. Da-da-da-da! Gunshots suddenly resounded in the wilderness where the battle just ended. It also made Olga turn pale with fright, and he quickly shouted, "Don't shoot! Stop shooting!" However, the whistling bullets didn't stop because of Olga's shout. In the midst of the gunshots, the pure white beast wasn't scared at all, and it didn't even stop moving. As the bullets were blocked by the wreckage of the pure white beast, Olga and Akihiro rushed to the side of Ryder and the others, and in one fell swoop, took away the guns in the hands of the frightened teenagers. "Don't shoot. It's not our enemy." Olga, who was looking at the pure white beast's actions from another angle, saw it more clearly than Ryder and the others. The pure white beast that came out of nowhere didn't have the intention to eat their partners, but it tore apart the wreckage that was on top of their partners so that they could rescue them. This is not. After Olga stopped the teenagers from shooting, the pure white beast raised its head and glanced at Olga and the others. Then, it slowly walked towards the other side, the pile of wreckage that looked even more twisted and difficult to rescue. "Quick, go and see." Olga pushed Ryder and asked him to go to see what the pure white beast was doing. The result was just as Olga guessed. The moment Ryder, with a face full of doubt and fear, walked to the wreckage that the pure white beast was messing with, he jumped up 3 feet on the spot and waved his hand to call for help. "Quick, someone come. Dug it out. Dug it out. Quick, come quickly." Ryder's reaction made Olga feel relieved, but at the same time, more doubts appeared in her mind. While in doubt, the moment Olga raised his head, he saw Ray Minkai standing at the entrance of CGS, looking at him. "It's you?" Olga didn't say anything, just move his mouth. Maybe he didn't see it, or maybe he didn't want to admit it. Ray Minkai just moved his eyes and looked at the back door of the CGS base. Over there was a cloud of dust rising. The CGS team came back. It seemed that there were still a lot of people alive. Olga glanced at the cloud of dust, then turned around to look at the white beast, who was fearful of its ferocious appearance, but also curious about how it tore apart the headache-inducing remains so easily. As for the teenagers who were watching from afar, Olga knew that it was time to carry out the decision in his heart. "Akihiro, can you come? Help me find Mitsuyuki." When Akihiro heard Olga's voice, he subconsciously looked at the pure white beast and also looked at Ray Minkai, then slowly nodded. "Okay." On the tower, Gidelia, who was placed here, silently looked at the people carrying stretchers to transport the wounded, bandaging the wounded, or sending the usable ammunition back to Neku, and pushing the wreckage that had turned into scrap metal to the other side of the hill. Is this all because of me? Shortly after the attack began, Gidelia learned from Biscat, who rushed to take her to a safe area, that the enemy was Lars Horn. She knew that she had become the target of the enemy. CGS. She was just a victim of this attack. Especially the teenagers who were now busy under the tower. They were the victims of the victims. "What are you thinking, Gidelia? Could it be that you're injured?" At this moment, a strange but familiar voice sounded. Gidelia turned around and saw a pretty woman who had changed into casual clothes. Her long pink hair was scattered over her shoulders. Judging from the slightly wet hair, the woman seemed to have taken the time to wash herself. "Huh, sorry. I just came out of the cockpit of the mobile engineer. It's inevitable that there will be some smell." Gidelia shook her head, and there seemed to be a trace of envy in her eyes. "No, I didn't mean that. I just think that you are very strong, to be able to sit in the cockpit of the mobile engineer and fight seriously." Hearing Gidelia's words, Lux smiled slightly, but she did not show a proud expression. "Are you envious of me, Gidelia?" Lux took a few steps forward, stood beside Gidelia, and looked at the teenagers who were coming and going under the tower. "Is it because you can only stand here and watch them get involved in this battle that started because of you, get injured, and die in this battle and feel powerless?" Lux's gaze seemed to be able to see through Gidelia, and she softly said what Gidelia was thinking at this moment. No, Gidelia subconsciously wanted to refute and avoid it, but when she met Lux's gaze that was enough to see through her thoughts, Gidelia chose to admit it. "Yes, Lux." The blonde girl nodded slowly, and there was a trace of confusion and guilt in her tone. "Why did things turn out like this? You still don't understand? What does your existence mean to Lars Horn?" Gidelia Lana Bernstein. Lux had already learned a lot about this name from Ray Minkai. The blonde girl in front of her was somewhat similar to herself in some ways. Although the concept was very beautiful, in the process of practice, she was unable to bear the means and strength to realize this ideal. Gidelia was stunned for a moment, and she was unable to immediately respond. Fortunately, in this somewhat awkward moment, the maid Fumitin Admos, who had gone to scout the situation earlier, appeared in the tower in time. "I'm back, Mississippi." The maid seemed to be very surprised by Lux's appearance. From her surprised expression, it seemed that she already knew about the scene where Lux piloted the mobile engineer and participated in the battle just now. "I'm very sorry. Before I came here, I received an order that if an accident happens, I must immediately inform Master. So, no, it's fine. Father already knows about what happened here." What did he say? Not only did Gidelia heave a sigh of relief at Fumitin's appearance, but also focused her attention on her father, Norman Bernstein's opinion on Lars Horn's attack on CGS. Master didn't express any opinions. He only asked Miss to return home as soon as possible and leave this troublesome place. Fumitin's gaze silently glanced at Lux, but she did not expect to meet Lux's gaze in that instant. Before Fumitin could shift her gaze away, she saw Lux nod slightly and smile at her. She saw through me? Frightening thoughts spun wildly in his mind, but Fumiton's face, which rarely showed any expression, calmly lowered his head. I'm very sorry. I was worried about Mrs. Safety just now, so I didn't notice your presence for a moment. Please forgive my rudeness. Oh, Lux, Fumiton didn't do it on purpose just now. Please don't blame her. Their gazes had only met for a moment, and Gudelia had not noticed anything strange in that instant. She simply thought that Fumiton had not noticed Lux's presence for a moment, so she tried to explain for Fumiton. No, I didn't pay attention to such things. I'm Lux Klein. I just became friends with Gudelia Lana Bernstein yesterday. Please take care of me in the future. Lux waved her hand, magnanimously indicating that she did not blame Fumiton. Thank you for your forgiveness, Miss Lux. I'm Fumiton, not Amos. From now on, please just call me Fumiton. If there's anything I can do for you, Miss Lux, please feel free to instruct me. It had to be said that Fumiton did indeed look like a competent maid. Is that so? Then, I'll have to trouble you from now on. After saying that, Lux casually waved her hand at Gudelia. All right, Gudelia, let's talk next time. Kai, you're still waiting for me. At the same time, there were bursts of exclamations from the CGS entrance. In the wreckage of the TK-53 scattered all over the battlefield, teenagers were successfully rescued one after another. Some were already dead, but some still had the hope of survival. As the number of survivors gradually increased, the teenagers who did not have a mission on hand were almost in groups of two. They carried a stretcher and followed behind the pure white beast, shuttling through the wreckage. Squeak, squeak. With a swipe of its sharp claws, the wreckage was torn apart on the spot. The last survivor was successfully rescued. Oh. In the midst of the cheers, some people noticed that the pure white beast that inexplicably appeared here and inexplicably helped them rescue their companions began to slowly walk toward the CGS entrance. Right now, with so many survivors being rescued by it, the youths holding the stretchers and following behind the pure white beast no longer cared if the pure white beast was hostile towards them. In the eyes of these teenagers, if it was hostile, would the pure white beast still help them tear apart the twisted wreckage and rescue their companions trapped inside? The teenagers looked at each other, carried the stretchers on their shoulders, kept a distance, and followed closely behind the pure white beast. They seemed to want to see what this strange pure white beast wanted to do. Little did they know that this scene was seen by Ray Minkai. What are you looking at? Lux's voice came from behind. Yeah, I'm looking at how State Zero gained a bunch of fans. Ray Minkai saw the scene of State Zero's rescue. He also saw the whole process of the teenagers' shock, fear, doubt, curiosity, and finally gratitude towards State Zero's existence. Fans, Lux was very puzzled. Moreover, she looked at the pure white lion, State Zero, who was walking slowly in front of her. She saw State Zero rolling his eyes helplessly with a very human expression. Kai, next time, if you ask me to do some rubbish work, I'll teach you a lesson. Chapter 672. 2 days. There were still 2 days before the inspector from Lars Horn's headquarters, Special Agent Major McGillis, arrived. At this critical moment, Connor Conrad didn't expect that the mission that was supposed to be in the bag would fail after sending out a mobile engineer brigade and 3 Greys armor troops. Looking at the unsmiling face on the screen that provoked his hatred, Connor Conrad was furious. In anger, Connor, the head of Lars Horn's Mars branch, no longer cared about his image. He stood up and pointed at the disgusting face on the screen and scolded. Listen carefully. Kronk, I don't care what method you use. You must solve this problem before the inspector comes here. Even the traces of battle must be cleaned up. Use your brain and your ears to remember clearly. Listen carefully. Whether it's people or objects, clean them up. Otherwise, you'll be finished. Connor's fierce words came out from the loudspeaker, scaring the surrounding Lars Horn soldiers. But even in the face of threats, Kronk remained silent. He didn't refute or respond to his superior's orders. He just silently waited for Connor's scolding to end before he reached out and turned off the communication. Lieutenant Kronk. As the communication was turned off, the surrounding situation also became quiet. At this time, No one was willing to touch Kronk's head, because they all knew that as long as Kronk couldn't complete Connor's mission, then everyone here would be doomed. However, in this situation, the rookie pilot Ein, whose upper body was almost wrapped in bandages and his left arm was hanging, walked out of the aisle step by step with the help of a walking stick. He looked at Crank, who was standing silently in front of the communication device. Ein, why did you leave the infirmary? The most important task for you now is to focus on healing. Kronk saw Ein's pale face and his upper body that was almost wrapped like a dumpling and couldn't help but scold him. No, I can't lie on the hospital bed calmly now. Our mission and the hatred of the killed Officer Orlis. Enough! Stop talking. Ein. Before Ein finished his words, he was interrupted by Kronk. Ein, listen, you shouldn't pay attention to this matter now. I'll take care of it. The only thing you need to do is rest well. How can that be? Those people, those mobile engineers, know how to deal with our Grey's opponents. Even if you, Lieutenant Kronk, attack again. Once again, Ein's words were interrupted by Kronk. That's because we underestimated our opponents. Ein, Lars Horn has been without an opponent in this world for too long. It's been so long that we, the pilots who drive the Greys, think that the mobile engineers are no different from moving coffins. They're just moving targets to be shot at. Kronk sighed. Ein was speechless. Even Ein, who was a newcomer, thought so. This might be the change in perspective brought about by the MS's natural sense of overlooking the mobile engineers. Maybe it was because of this that they suffered a crushing defeat this time. Ein moved his lips, but he couldn't say such words. He knew that even if he said it, he wouldn't be able to stop Kronk's next move. Ein, go back and recuperate. Let me handle the rest of the matter alone. Kronk's back was facing Ein. After carefully arranging the equipment for another attack, he turned around and walked to Ein. There are young soldiers in the CGS base. Although we don't know if they are among those mobile engineers, we who participated in that battle may have become the murderers of those young soldiers. So Ein, please. Lieutenant Kronk. Ein was about to open his mouth and dissuade Kronk again, but Kronk stuffed a stiff object into his hand. From the touch, it seemed to be jewelry. Lieutenant Kronk. Wait. Enough. Ein, with your current body, you'll just be a burden if you follow us. Wah. Wah. Soft exclamations of surprise continued to ring out. Two petite figures struggled to push away the youths who had surrounded them. It was not easy for them to squeeze to the front. Then, they looked at the white figure lying on the side of the door and waved their fingers. What is that? A cat? No, a tiger. Biscat's twin sisters, Cookie Griffin and Clocka Griffin, kept looking back at the teenagers around them, as if they wanted to know the true identity of the white figure lying lazily on the side of the door from their mouths. In the end, the answers given by the teenagers far exceeded the twins' guesses, and it was getting more and more outrageous. In addition to being outrageous, they even called it monster to scare the children. No, that's not right. Its name is Snacks, White Lion Zero. As the melodious voice rang out, the group of youths inadvertently opened up a path, allowing the owner of the melodious voice to appear behind the twins. White Lion? Looking at the doubtful twins, Lakis could not help but sigh inwardly. Yes, White Lion. In other words, a white lion. What is that? Clocka, who had a strong personality and was also an extrovert, pulled the corner of Lakis's shirt without any fear. It is a ferocious beast that lives on the grasslands of Earth. Ferocious beast? Lakis's explanation seemed to have made the twins understand a little, and, at the same time, it made them shrink slightly towards Lakis. It won't eat people, right? The soft voice was mixed with a trace of fear. No, it won't. State Zero won't hurt you. Don't you think so? Once they saw Lakis looking at them with a smile, the teenagers suddenly became restless and patted their chests to guarantee that the white beast lying on the side of the door wouldn't hurt them. Even some of the teenagers who were slightly injured joined in patting their chests to guarantee. For a moment, the whole scene became noisy. TSK. These guys are really making a big fuss. If we annoy that beast, we'll be done for. Standing on the side of the building, Eugene gritted his teeth with a trace of fear in his eyes. That was a ferocious beast that could tear apart armor plates. This group of brats who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth actually dared to circle around it in such a chaotic manner. Isn't this good? At least, it gives us more space to move around. But we'll have to trouble you, sir. Olga, who was at the side, twitched the corner of her mouth, but unexpectedly, it pulled on the wound that was left when she met the surviving captain of the first team, Helda. I suggest you don't move around. You don't have to worry about State Zero. As long as you don't go up and touch it, State Zero won't care about them. Ray Minkai, who was sitting by the bed, naturally saw the scene of State Zero being surrounded. Is that so? Then, it's really a big help. Although there wasn't much change on the surface, Ray Minkai still felt that Olga was relieved. But, sir, I'm afraid CGS's debt can't be repaid. Oh, is that fellow Maruba willing to abandon his coffers? Ray Minkai naturally knew that in the battle just now, Maruba would be one of the casualties. Treasury? Olga silently muttered that sentence, then smiled slightly, but it pulled on the wound on her face again. With a pained expression, Olga spoke again. I'm afraid your debt can't be collected. What do you plan to do next? What do I do? Ray Minkai glanced at Olga, then shifted his gaze to Eugene. Sure enough, unlike Olga's calm gaze, which was waiting for Ray Minkai to make a choice, Eugene's gaze was blazing. It seemed that she really wanted Ray Minkai to stay and use the so-called debt to influence Olga's actions. Is this inviting a wolf into the house? Eugene, this guy. Let's see how it goes. And if we leave like this, I'm afraid Lars Horn won't let us go. Ray Minkai's gaze passed over the field where the heavily damaged TK-53 mobile soldier was parked. He passed through the noisy gate and also passed through the wilderness where there was still a trace of smoke. He seemed to be looking at something that Olga and Eugene couldn't see. Lars Horn, you mean they haven't given up? Olga was shocked and quickly asked, Give up? Olga, don't you think you're being too naive? Why would Lars Horn suddenly attack this unknown, third-rate company? Is her appearance not enough to make you think that this battle wasn't premeditated? Eudelia Lana Bernstein, the girl who led the Mars independence movement. The thin layer of paper in Olga's mind might have been exposed by Ray Minkai at this moment. Is that so? Before Eudelia is captured or even killed by Lars Horn, I'm afraid these attacks won't end. Thinking of this, Olga suddenly sighed. Old Maruba's death was not worth it. He didn't even know why he provoked Lars Horn, and he died without knowing. It's not worth it or not. For people like Maruba, dying like this is already a good thing for him. Ray Minkai knocked on the table and attracted Olga and Eugene's attention. About the debt. Although Maruba is dead, CGS is still here. Therefore, the debt is still valid. Then, under this relationship, I hope to make a bet with Captain Olga. Bet? Olga and Eugene asked in unison. Yes. Captain Olga, you do what you want to do. And I, after you succeed, will help you resist Lars Horn's attack. Ray Minkai's words made Olga and Eugene look at each other in dismay. It wasn't that they weren't surprised, but they were puzzled by Ray Minkai's confidence that everything would happen. Olga, Eugene, who had been fighting with Olga, winked at Olga. But Olga didn't pay any attention to Eugene. So, Your Excellency wants to be tied to CGS? CGS? Ray Minkai laughed heartily. CGS doesn't have the value of being tied to me. Captain Olga. See, Eugene subconsciously refuted, but Olga reached out and stopped him. Under the dart bangs, there was a pair of eyes that seemed to be enlightened. Is that so? Then I understand. Hopefully, Your Excellency will keep your promise. After all, we are like a group of bugs, and we can't resist Lars Horn's attack. Ray Minkai stood up and walked to Olga's side. He raised his hand and patted Olga's shoulder. Olga, since you think of you as bugs, then let me see the backbone of you bugs. When Ray Minkai's footsteps gradually faded away, Olga lowered her head and smiled. The light in her eyes became more and more intense. Yes, even if we are worthless bugs, we still have backbone. Your Excellency, Ray Minkai. Bang! At night, a gunshot sounded from deep within the CGS base. Kai, what are you looking at? Dinner's getting cold. Lakis looked at Ray Minkai, who closed the window, puzzled. No, it's just that the wind is changing. Ray Minkai and White Lion, who was lying in the corner of the room, looked at each other. Aren't you going back to your original form? White Lion rolled his eyes and said helplessly, You think I don't want to? My current form is already the limit of maintaining the stability of the gamma rays. If I continue to compress my power, I'm afraid this area will become a forbidden zone for life after being bombarded by gamma rays. Is it that serious? Ever since State Zero came to this world, this was the first time he mentioned the gamma rays that he absorbed. From State Zero's description of his situation, Ray Minkai felt that the word stuffed that he understood was not enough to describe State Zero's current situation. Yes, so don't expect me to lie on your shoulder like before. After muttering a few words, White Lion turned over and closed his eyes. All right, isn't State Zero in a good state now? At least, the young people here are not afraid of State Zero's appearance. Lakis sent a bowl of borscht to Ray Minkai. Come, hurry up and eat, before it gets cold. Ray Minkai had already figured out what was going on the moment he looked into the bowl. This isn't made by you, Lakis, right? Lakis smiled. No, there are parts made by me and parts made by others. Generally speaking, the borscht is made by me and Gedelia. Ray Minkai went silent. Chapter 673. The silent steel giant once again stood in the wilderness that was ravaged by artillery fire. On the shield in his left hand, a piece of red cloth was fluttering in the wind. A duel. Ray Minkai looked at the piece of red cloth fluttering in the wind, then turned back to look at Olga and the others who were trying to disband Team 1 and take over CGS, but were interrupted by the sudden arrival of Grays. Lars Hornagata, did he really come? Olga took the binoculars from Takaki and looked at the Grays that slowly landed at the perfect distance. Olga, what does that piece of red cloth mean? Olga frowned and touched the back of her head. She didn't know how to answer for a while. It means a duel. The pilot of this Grays seems to want to duel with someone among us. Ray Minkai moved his gaze and saw a clue from the fluttering red cloth. The actions of this Grays were not unexpected, but its target did not seem to be CGS or one of Olga and the others. In the slightly cool breeze, Crank walked out of the cockpit and stood next to Gray's head monitor. At this moment, his gaze traveled all the way up the wilderness, looking at the base where Gallowhorn's actual combat force had suffered a crushing defeat. He looked at the group of people gathered around the CGS gate. Judging from the sparse silhouettes, this civilian armed base did indeed use a lot of young soldiers. In other words, the speculation that Crank and Ein said before was correct. This made Crank's right hand that held the megaphone slightly tightened. Facing the increasingly bone-chilling wind, Crank moved his gaze away from the gate of CGS and landed on the blade that was still inserted in the wilderness. It was still on the severed arm of Grays, piloted by Ein. Then he suddenly raised his gaze and looked at the gate of CGS again. I'm Crank Chant, who belongs to Lars Horn of Gada Gada. I hope to have a one-on-one duel with the owner of this blade. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's gaze immediately turned to the figure standing in front of the door. Everyone who had participated and witnessed that battle knew that the blade didn't come from anyone in CGS, but from Ray Minkai. What a headache! I didn't expect this guy's target to be me. Ray Minkai shrugged and said helplessly. As he spoke, he glanced at the three suns and moons, who had their hands in their pockets and were watching everything unfold with their trademark expressionless faces. Now that the three suns and moons couldn't successfully sit on Barbados, it seemed like they needed target. What surprised Ray Minkai was that Crank actually came to him. At this moment, the wind once again carried Crank's voice to everyone's ears. Only the CGS of the mobile engineers is no match for Lars Horn's actual combat troops. However, under this understanding, you have defeated us and Lars Horn of the Mars branch. The person who can make you achieve such amazing results is probably the person behind the scenes who is directing all of this. Crank paused. His gaze moved around the entrance of CGS as if he wanted to find the mastermind behind the scenes among the sparse figures. Suddenly, a gaze as cold as a sharp blade met Crank's gaze. That is. At this moment, Crank felt a trace of coldness, but also a trace of excitement. He didn't know what it was for, but he knew that today's matter might have already come to an end. His right hand that was holding the walkie-talkie tightened again. This is a one-on-one duel. If I win, you must hand over Gudelia, Lana, Bernstein, and Gretz, who was captured by you. After the outcome is decided, everything else will be left to me. You, CGS, and Lars Horn of the Mars branch will no longer have anything to do with you. Hand over, Miss. Biscat was surprised. I told you, Lars Horn of the Mars branch is here for Gudelia, Lana Bernstein. To do, who was lying on a mobile engineer, wave his right hand repeatedly, trying to attract Olga's attention. Shut up, clown. Unexpectedly, as soon as To-Do finished his words, a huge pressure suddenly pressed him against the cold armor plate of the mobile engineer. You, stop! In the midst of exclamations, a deep chill and sharp claws occupied To-Do's thoughts and vision. Shut up, clown who doesn't know what's good for you. Ray Minkai's voice sounded again, making everyone who could only watch the giant white lion press To-Do against a mobile engineer look at him again. Olga, will you agree? Ray Minkai raised his finger and pointed at Gretz, who was wearing a red cloth. Although that guy is a member of Lars Horn's actual combat force, he can't make any decisions, especially when it comes to the sensitive issue of Gudelia Lana Bernstein. About me, Gudelia was taken aback and pointed at herself. Didn't he say that as long as I'm handed over, the people here will be fine? Will he go back on his word after the fact? Ray Minkai shook his head and looked at Lakis. What happened next was not up to Ray Minkai to explain. No, this Kronk Chant is probably not a person with real power in the Lars Horn of the Mars branch. Do you remember in the previous battle, the Gretz who kept shouting while attacking? I'm afraid that the pilot who piloted the Gretz was the commander of that battle. Therefore, this person who claims to be Kronk Chant is probably just here to clean up the mess. Lakis explained the situation and speculations as simply as possible to Gudelia and everyone else. In addition, you may not know, but outside the Mars ring, a cruiser from Earth, Lars Horn of the Mars headquarters, is approaching here. The cruiser's mission is to monitor the operations of the Lars Horn of the Mars branch over the years. Lakis took a deep breath and stared at Gudelia. You should understand now, right? A supervisor from Earth headquarters. That means the Mars branch is trying to bury some facts. And among these facts, I, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, am the biggest hidden danger. Gudelia was smart and quickly understood her situation after Lux's reminder. Even if Olga and the others handed her over, the people in this base would still face the end of being killed. Therefore, in this duel, the promise made by Kronk Chant was just an illusion. Do you understand? Then it's my job now. Seeing Gudelia's expression, Ray Minkai knew it was time for him to appear. Your Excellency, Ray Minkai, what are you doing? They are coming for CGS. Olga hurriedly shouted as soon as he saw Ray Minkai walk out of the CGS entrance. Ray Minkai stopped, looked back at Olga, and smiled. Coming for CGS? Hee hee. Olga, don't be too arrogant. Kronk Chant chose me, not you. But are you going to go over just like that? At the very least, you should be piloting a mobile engineer. Olga opened his mouth, but in the end, he only said this suggestion that even he couldn't believe. TK 53? Hee hee. Don't underestimate me. Olga. Lei Minkai let out a hearty laugh. Don't look at me like this. I still have partners that I can rely on. In the next second, under everyone's gaze, Ray Minkai raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. The moment the loud sound resounded through CGS, there was a thunderous sound in the sky. Boom! In an instant, a gorgeous afterimage fell from the sky and landed directly behind the pure white blade. That's MS. A blue and black body, a mighty and tall body, and a pair of huge light wings shining with gorgeous flowing colors. This was the true appearance of the MS that had suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes, including Gretz's. Its appearance not only shocked Kronk, but also made Olga and the others fall into a dead silence. Okay, now, all the chess pieces are in place. The duel, can we start now? In the wilderness full of craters and scattered wreckage, two steel giants, created by the top of human technology, were facing each other with a distance of 100 meters. Every time the cold wind that gradually rolled up the mud and dust in the wilderness passed by the two steel giants, it couldn't help but become violent. In the gradually violent wind, the reactor gradually increased its output and entered combat mode with a low roar. Kronk's eyes were dignified. He had never seen the MS in front of him before. Even in the database of Lars Horn and MS that he came into contact with, there was no such strange, yet somehow sacred body. It was a steel body that was completely different from the design concept of MS led by Lars Horn and MS. The pair of dazzling and gorgeous light wings was something that Lars Horn and MS designers had never come into contact with or even imagined. What is the origin of this body? Clenching the joystick that had long become a part of his body, Kronk took a deep breath and stared at the body on the screen that pulled out the pure white blade inserted in the wilderness. Lars Horn and MS Hornmar's Branch Combat Force, Kronk chant. A familiar scene, a familiar tone. Ray Minkai was slightly stunned, then he laughed heartily. What a nostalgic scene. I don't know how many years it has been since I last saw such a scene. Ray Minkai's words made Kronk frown. Isn't it natural to announce your name before the duel? No, sorry. I just felt the urge to say it. Kronk chant. For me, such a formal duel is something that happened a long time ago. Under Ray Minkai's clear voice, the sound of two locking mechanisms opening followed closely. It was the sound of another pure white blade and a shield falling to the ground. Are you insulting me? Kronk looked at the sword and shield that splashed mud and dust and let out a low roar. No, this guy's name is Free Gouda. With its performance and this blade, it is enough to duel with you. Kronk chant. The pure white blade held by Free Gouda's right hand cut through the sky, rolling up bursts of wind and thunder. Only when Free Gouda held it up in front of him did Kronk understand Ray Minkai's and even Free Gouda's actions. That it was the highest form of greeting that a knight would give to his opponent. You, who exactly are you? So strange, but there was some kind of ancient etiquette that reminded Kronk of the ancient era before the Calamity Sacrificial War. Legend has it that before the Calamity Sacrificial War, most people settled most of the disputes through duels. Isn't this also the idea that you proposed? Kronk chant. Under the sun, under the pair of dazzling and gorgeous light wings, Free Gouda, who was floating slightly off the ground and holding the blade with both hands, actually gave Kronk the illusion that he was looking at the holy knight mentioned in the myths. Is that so? Thank you very much. Maybe it's a little arrogant, but this is the real me. Holy Britannia Empire's Queen's Guardian Knight, Ray Minkai. Join the battle. The wind blew in an instant. The two steel giants launched their attacks on the spot, setting off a gust of wind that swept across the field, rolling up bursts of smoke and dust. However, the thunder-like sound of fierce battle that Olga and the others imagined didn't come, because the moment the gust of wind blew, the result of the duel was already decided. The pure white blade was like lightning, instantly piercing through Gray's cockpit. Looking at the pure white blade that pierced through his chest and stopped the moment it pierced through his body, Kronk raised his head with difficulty and looked at the screen in front of him. But he couldn't see anything on the screen that was destroyed when the pure white blade pierced through the cockpit. Cough. So that's how it is. His confusion and dissatisfaction towards the fact that Free Gouda touched the other blade and shield had already disappeared. The reason why the other party did that was not to humiliate him, but because one blade was enough to finish him off. Holy Britannia Empire? On Earth, is there such a country? The operation of the AHAP reactor stopped. Just like its owner, Kronk chant, it fell into a deathly stillness. The only difference was that other than the cockpit being pierced through, there was no other damage. Gray's only needed some treatment before it could be used again. The pure white blade pierced through the sky, scattering the captivating red entwined on the tip of the sword. The pair of dazzling light wings also gradually folded, allowing Free Gao to stand on the ground again. The moment the youngsters exploded with cheers that resounded through the sky. Without a doubt, the Free Gao who finished off Gray's in an instant had formed an incomparably powerful image in the hearts of the CGS youngsters. Olga, how about the name Iron Flower Regiment? Iron Flower Regiment? Yes, this is a good name. Your Excellency, Ray Minkai. Chapter 674. Iron Flower Regiment. When the MS, who looked like a god descending from the heavens, pierced through the insufferably arrogant MS Gallahorn in a split second and slowly landed in front of the CGS entrance, this name resounded in everyone's ears. Iron Flower Regiment. Gedelia's eyes were filled with the gorgeous light wings that occupied all of her vision. Yes, Iron Flower Regiment. Perhaps I understand what Mr. Lei Minkai is trying to say. A flower that will never wither like iron. Olga's voice was a little hoarse. Moreover, when he explained his understanding of the name, he looked at Ray Minkai, who walked out of the cockpit. Am I right, Sir Ray Minkai? The light wings gradually folded and returned to the original steel wings. Ray Minkai's eyes fell on Olga's face. I just mentioned it casually. I didn't expect you to really use this name. Olga put his hands in his pockets, shrugged slightly, and laughed at himself. That's true. After all, I haven't read many books. This name may be the most suitable for a new name. Then, Commander Olga, should we talk about the problem between us? The problem that continues from CGS. Yes. It's time. Under Gao Da's command, the two stood face to face and spoke in a language that no one else could understand. The battle between the Gallahorn Mars branch and the CGS came to an end with the death of Kronkchant. However, Connor Conrad, the head of the Gallahorn Mars branch, was in an even worse mood. Although Crank followed his orders to carry out the task of eliminating CGS and Gedelia Lana Bernstein, it led to the end of his life and failure. This made Connor Conrad, the branch head's original plan to wipe out everything before the inspectors from Lars Horn's headquarters arrived on Mars. For this reason, Connor had to be extremely alert to deal with the two inspectors from Lars Horn's headquarters. However, the forced smile was seen by the masked but inconspicuous man standing in the corner. Connor's attitude and words in order to welcome the two inspectors were all remembered in his heart. The welcoming ceremony that made Connor nervous, fearing that the two inspectors would suddenly mention matters related to Mars independence and Gedelia Lana Bernstein, finally ended. What a good show. McKillis, is this the show you want me to watch? Standing by the porthole, the mask that covered his face faced the crimson star. Well, yes. I want to know what you think. Mr. K. McKillis sat on the sofa, his right hand habitually rubbing his bangs on his forehead. This was a small gesture McKillis. Every time his mind became active, he would always subconsciously do this little action. My thoughts. McKillis, don't you care too much about what I think? Between us, it's just a cooperative relationship. I don't want to interfere with the internal affairs of you and Lars Horn. There was a burst of laughter under the mask. The arrogant attitude made Galileo, who was sitting next to him and pouring himself a cup of coffee, frown, but he didn't say anything. During the journey from Earth to Mars, Galileo had suffered losses in this regard, which was enough to raise his temperament to a higher level. Such a simple provocation, Galileo might be able to face it without batting an eyelid. McKillis' gaze moved from under the rub bangs to Galileo, who was calmly pouring coffee, and then looked at the masked man standing by the porthole. Mr. K, from our intelligence, the operation here seems to have failed. Are you interested in going down with me? This was an invitation. It was also a request. However, Mr. K, rejected the offer. Sorry, although I'm also going to the Crimson Star, I still have some personal matters to take care of here. Agent Matt Gillis, Major. Please forgive me for my rudeness. McKillis frowned slightly at the rejection, but it was only for a moment. The next second, McKillis' face returned to normal, and he smiled gently. Is that so? Then I'm sorry, but I hope we can meet up at Kari's. Of course. As long as I'm done here, I'll go to Kari's and meet up with you, Major McKillis. The masked man turned around, nodded slightly at McKillis, and strode out of the room. With the guarantee of McGillis, the supervisor of the Gallahorn headquarters, the masked man named Mr. K was naturally able to move freely in the Gallahorn Martian branch. But the premise was that Mr. K would not trespass into forbidden areas. As the bitter coffee slid down his throat, Galio's eyes followed Mr. K as he left. His gaze stopped at the automatic door that blocked Mr. K's back from his view. McKillis, why do you value that masked man so much? Although I know our business need a lot of talents, a man of unknown origin, how can we just let him move freely in our Lars Hormars branch? McKillis naturally knew his friend's doubts. Galio, this is the inevitable result. Although the man has never shown himself to me, or to us, his talents have been obvious to all during this journey to Mars. Isn't that right? Whether it's the simulation battle between battleships or the tactical command of conflicts, we are as ignorant and incompetent as 3-year-old children in front of him. McKillis' frank admission made Galio's right hand tremble, and he almost spilled the coffee in his cup. Yes, it happened on the second day after Mr. K was invited by McGillis to board the cruiser to Mars. Galio, who hated him, found a random reason to trick the masked man into the tactical simulation center and try to test the masked man's true identity. As a result, Galio Badwin, who boasted that he had only lost to McKillis among the younger generation of Lars Hornmars, ushered in the biggest fiasco of his life. Whether it was the command of the fleet, the tactical command of the MS team, or even the one-on-one duel with the MS team, he lost to the masked man. Under the fiasco, Galio, who was unwilling to accept the failure, was impulsive and almost proposed a real duel. However, McKillis stopped him and proposed the idea of a duel with the masked man. Mr. K naturally did not refuse. Unfortunately, under Galio's expectant gaze, McGillis, who in Galio's eyes had always been an unparalleled talent among the younger generation of Gallahorn, was defeated. Just like Galio himself, he was utterly defeated. Since then, McKillis began to indulge Mr. K, to the point that Galio could not stand it anymore. In Galio's opinion, even if the masked man named Mr. K had the ability to look down on the younger generation of Lars Hormars, he should not have been so indulgent. He should not have allowed this masked man of unknown origin to act as he pleased in Lars Hormars under the guise of recruiting him. Even if he intended to recruit him, he should have stopped at a suitable time. That guy, I've never seen any signs of him being recruited by us. Galio took a sip of coffee and suddenly felt that the coffee in his hand seemed to be a little difficult to swallow. After casually putting the cup on the table, Galio reached out and searched the cabinet while speaking his thoughts. Agent Major McKillis, I don't know if you have a feeling. I have a feeling that fellow isn't one of us. A feeling? McKillis glanced at his friend who was searching for something on the cabinet and frowned slightly. He seemed to be thinking about his friend's question. Yes, a feeling. Oh, found it. The Mars branch of Lars Hornmars is indeed hiding some treasures. Galio responded to McGillis and took out a dusty bottle from the cabinet with a pleasantly surprised expression. Galio, drinking now is not a good thing. We need to maintain a clear mind to deal with the situation here. McKillis looked up and glanced at the bottle that Galio took out from the cabinet and waved his hand slightly. How could that be? It's just a little bit. Galio did not care if McKillis really rejected him or not. He began to look around for a tool to open the cork on the bottle. In the process of searching, Galio opened his mouth again. That guy, I can't feel the aura of an ordinary young man from him. From the day he came to our cruiser, the feeling I felt from him was the same as that of the uppermost elders of our Seven Stars family. Galio's hands paused for a moment, and his gaze gradually turned solemn. No, Galio, that aura, even the people in our Seven Stars family can't compare. McKillis looked at the red land with a deep gaze. That might be the attitude of an emperor. McKillis did not say this sentence out loud. It only sounded in his heart and was then buried in the deepest part of his heart, a place that no one knew about. Oh, found it. McKillis, do you want a drink? The two tacitly stopped talking about this topic. McKillis looked at Galileo, who opened the cork, and the corner of his mouth curved up slightly. Okay. Let's treat it as the first glass of wine that Mars welcomes us. The new Ironflower Regiment was facing so many things that Olga, the new regiment commander, was scratching his head and almost breaking down, especially when the Ironflower Regiment, who inherited CGS's finances, was facing a crisis of spending collapse. The new regiment commander's brows were tightly knitted and did not loosen for a long time. Oh no, regiment commander. The funds inherited from CGS can only support the minimum expenditure of our Ironflower Regiment for 3 months. The new Ironflower Regiment's treasurer, Dexter Karast, held his tablet and carefully explained the results of his analysis of CGS's accounts. Minimum expenditure? What do you mean? Not to mention Olga, who was facing an astronomical amount of documents. Even the new deputy regiment commander, Eugene, was dumbfounded. It means that the Ironflower Regiment can still maintain the third. No, under the condition of maintaining the minimum combat power, the Ironflower Regiment can still maintain the expenditure for 3 months. After 3 months, I'm afraid the Ironflower Regiment will go bankrupt. Dexter Curlist glanced at Eugene and did not seem to be frightened by Eugene's ferocious muttering. After 3 months, the Ironflower Regiment will go bankrupt. Dexter's words made Eugene feel like he had just entered heaven and was about to fall into hell. Calm down, Eugene. It's not that time yet. Olga scolded Eugene, trying to calm him down. At the same time, he looked at Lei Mingkai, who had been sitting in the corner since the beginning of the meeting but hadn't spoken a word. Olga said apologetically, Your Excellency, Lei Mingkai, I believe you've heard it. Although our Ironflower Regiment is a new regiment, we don't have any funds to repay the debt we inherited from CGS. Repay? Why should we repay? Between us, shouldn't there be a mission to escort us to Earth? Regiment Commander Olga. But, let alone going to Earth, we haven't even left Mars. Under such circumstances, I don't have much confidence to complete the mission you entrusted to us. Facing the Ironflower Regiment's predicament, Olga really wanted to continue Lei Mingkai's mission. But the financial difficulties made Olga have no choice but to give up. Is that so? Then, what about Gedelia Lana Bernstein? You should know that the current situation is largely due to her existence. Could it be that the Ironflower Regiment will also refuse to continue this young lady's mission? Lei Mingkai's eyes flashed. He already knew the answer. Olga wouldn't refuse Gedelia's mission. And the debt he claimed was just a continuation of the traces left by Hunter Austin in this life. No, sure enough, as the new regiment commander, Olga's response was still a little harsh. How about this? I can wait for Gedelia Lana Bernstein's decision before making a decision. Lei Mingkai didn't intend to continue making things difficult for Olga. Instead, after expressing his opinion, he added another sentence. Also, in view of the current situation, we can temporarily give up on pursuing the debt from CGS and use part of the debt as funds to invest in the Ironflower Regiment. In this way, Regiment Commander Olga's difficulties may be lessened. Investment. The moment Lei Mingkai's words left his mouth, everyone present jumped in fright. Your Excellency, you're saying that you want to invest in our Ironflower Regiment. Olga moved his mouth, but didn't know what to say for a moment. And yes, after all, I'm very optimistic about the future of the Ironflower Regiment. At the same time, for the sake of fellow comrades who participated in the battle against Lars Horn, I'm willing to use part of the debt left by CGS as funds to invest in the development of the Ironflower Regiment. That means, Lei Mingkai, you're going to be our new boss? Eugene subconsciously pointed at Lei Mingkai, his finger trembling as he spoke. No, I have no intention of participating in the daily operations of the Ironflower Regiment. I just don't want to see the new Ironflower Regiment die, prematurely due to lack of funds. Lei Mingkai waved his hand and looked at Olga. What do you think of this plan? Regiment Commander Olga. Olga pursed his lips. He knew, if he agreed, It meant that the Iron Flower Regiment had to complete Rei Minkai's mission. But what's wrong with that? His dart bangs slowly fell, and Olga's gaze became sharp. In the name of the Iron Flower Regiment's regiment commander, I accept the investment from Rei Minkai. Welcome to our Iron Flower Regiment. Rei Minkai. Chapter 675. The ancient MS that had been dormant for hundreds of years was moved out of the underground warehouse by the Iron Flower Regiment. Nadi, a maintenance officer with the name of Shui Cheng, was leading a group of people around this ancient MS. They were trying to install the parts placed around this ancient MS one by one, trying to repair it to a level where it could be used in combat as much as possible. What a pain in the ass. Nadi frowned as he held the tablet in his left hand and scratched the back of his head with his right hand. He seemed to be at a loss. Even though the ground around him was filled with armor removed from another graze, Nadi, who had only ever worked with mobile engineers, couldn't find anything to do at the last minute. "Pops, you don't know how to do it either?" Takaki instructed his partner to put away the last piece of armor that was removed from Gray's body. Then he moved closer to Nadi. Nadi pursed his lips and shook his head in distress. "Sigh, the only time I remember working with an MS was when I was young. Since then, I've only been working with mobile engineers. This is really difficult for me." After letting out a sigh, Nadi's face showed a hint of relief. "Luckily, our new boss knows the Alea system." Takaki also showed a hint of relief when he heard this. It was the second day after Rei Minkai invested in the Ironwool Regiment. Knowing that CGS had hidden Babado's underground, Rei Minkai immediately used the excuse of wanting to repair Babado's to discuss with Olga how to drag Babado's out for repairs. This coincided with Olga's thoughts. After all, after witnessing the power of the Free Gauda, Olga, who already knew that there was an ancient MS under the CGS base, naturally wouldn't let go of the opportunity to test out the MS. Therefore, the two sides hit it off. In terms of hardware, the maintenance team, led by Nadi from the Iron Flower Regiment, tried to fix the possible problems and faults that Babado's might have. As for the software, it was left to Rei Minkai, who claimed to be able to repair and edit the Alea system. Although Olga had some doubts, she accepted Rei Minkai's suggestion since almost everyone in the Iron Flower Regiment only knew how to fight and kill. Of course, in everyone's eyes, Rei Minkai, who was sitting in the cockpit of Babado's, wasn't completely relying on his own ability to modify Babado's system and the newly installed Alea system. The white mane fluttered in the wind as the snow-white lion lay on Babado's right shoulder and squinted its eyes slightly. From a bystander's point of view, this strange white lion was merely taking a nap on the ancient Barbado's shoulder. But in fact, this snow-white lion was relying on its own ability to crack the system of this Barbado's. Then it cooperated with Rei Minkai to make adjustments to this system and the Alea consciousness system. Rays of light flowed through its slender eyes as the snow-white lion's consciousness gradually went deep into Babado's system as the cracking progressed. The snow-white lion came to a dead silence in an instant when a light breeze swept up the dust. "Kai, can you hear me?" The snow-white lion looked around in the darkness and opened its mouth slightly. "Yes, received. Importing the program now. State 0. Accept it." "Understood." The moment the snow-white lion fell into the darkness, it was a signal, an opportunity to wake up this ancient MS that had been sleeping for hundreds of years and had become a mess internally. The streams of light formed by the data broke through the darkness and came from the top of the snow-white lion's head. With the snow-white lion as the starting point, it swept out in all directions like a storm. In this increasingly intense storm, countless broken data were excavated from the endless darkness. Under the joint efforts of Rei Minkai and State 0, they were once again integrated and became the foundation to drive the rapid awakening of this ancient mess. The sun rose quietly. According to the original plan, 3 hours had passed since Olga and the others went out to find a guide who could lead the Iron Flower Regiment to Earth. Nadi could not help but wiped the sweat on his forehead as he looked at the result of installing most of the armor on Babato's body. Phew, it's finally done. Although it's a little ugly, Takaki, how's it going on your side? Nadi was in charge of installing the armor, while Takaki was refilling Babato's propulsion engine with fuel. Yes, it's going well here too. Takaki raised his right hand and waved, then looked up at Babato's cockpit. 3 hours had already passed. Other than Rei Mingkai and the big lion lying on Babato's shoulder, no one else went up. I wonder what's going on over there? All of a sudden, Takaki saw the lion sleeping on Babato's shoulder move. Seems like there's a result. Takaki was about to speak, but he saw the big lion looking down at him. Under the gaze of the pair of faintly golden eyes, Takaki shrunk his head and retreated to Babato's shadow, no longer trying to ask about the result. Phew! The wind blew, and the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground could be heard. Takaki did not dare to poke his head out to see what was going on. Yo, boss, is this guy's system done? Compared to Takaki, who shrunk his head when he saw State Zero, Nadi was more relaxed. When he saw Rei Mingkai jumping down from Babato's cockpit behind the snow-white lion, he went up to greet him. It's almost done. Next, it's time for testing. Now that the hardware and software were done, it was time to test Babato's reactivation. As for the tester who activated Babato's, it was undoubtedly 3 suns and moon August. Since early in the morning, after receiving the mission of being a pilot to test the awakening of Barbados, the 3 suns and moon had been staying nearby, watching Nadi and Takaki circling around Barbados. As for Rei Mingkai, it was not because 3 suns and moon did not pay attention, but because 3 suns and moon could not see Rei Mingkai sitting in Babato's cockpit. 3 suns and moon, come here for a while. Upon seeing Rei Mingkai's summon, 3 Rei Moon swiftly took off the coat that was draped over his body, revealing the 3 nano devices under his neck, the Alea consciousness system. This was the most important reason why Olga let 3 suns and moon become Babato's pilot. 3 suns and moon. Although the Alea consciousness system has been organized by the boss, we don't know how it operates. From what we know about the Alea consciousness system, the moment this guy activates, there will be a huge amount of data flow that will impact your brain nerves. When that happens, it might be very painful. After all, this guy is not a simple existence like the mobile engineers. Seeing 3 suns and moon sitting in Babato's cockpit, Nadi could not help but show a hint of worry. However, Rei Mingkai, who was standing on the other side, smiled. No, Nadi, you can rest assured. Actually, when I was adjusting the Alea consciousness system just now, I did a series of optimizations for the data flow impact that will occur when the system is connected. I believe that when the system activates, it will not cause too much of a burden to 3 suns and moon. Is that so? Seeing Rei Mingkai's confident smile, Nadi touched the back of his head and did not say anything in the end. Looking at 3 suns and moon, no matter how much Nadi and Rei Mingkai discussed the terrifying data flow that would occur when the Alea consciousness system was activated and how much of a burden it would cause him, they did not care much. What he cared about was to be able to wake up this ancient body as soon as possible. Well, can I activate this guy now? Oh. 3 suns and moon, wait. The Alea consciousness system is not connected yet. Nadi hurriedly responded. As he spoke, he picked up the connection plug of the Alea consciousness system and connected the 3 suns and moons to Babato's. Okay, the Alea consciousness system is connected. 3 suns and moon, you can activate. 3 suns and moon nodded and turned to look at Rei Mingkai. 3 suns and moon, go ahead and try. If there is anything wrong, you can stop immediately. We will continue to optimize and modify. Hearing Rei Mingkai's promise, 3 suns and moon nodded, then raised his hand and pressed on the control panel in front of him. Buzz. The moment the system received the activation command, a soft roar followed. Then, the screen became bright, and 3 suns and moon were engulfed by intense pain. Ugh! The moment the terrifying pain engulfed 3 suns and moon's body, the thin and small body of 3 suns and moon was tense. But Rei Mingkai, who was observing from the side, did not see Three Suns and Moon's nosebleed when they first connected to Barbados. Looks like our adjustment was successful. After a painful roar, Three Suns and Moon's eyes, which became fierce due to the pain, fell on the screen in front of him. Barbados. Naughty was a little confused. This guy is called Barbados. Naughty, and sir, thank you. I seem to be able to activate this guy. That's good. Naughty, let's leave here first and let Three Suns and Moon try to activate Barbados. The two quickly walked to the side and watched the cockpit of Barbados slowly close, waiting for the ancient Nemes to wake up. As the cockpit closed, Three Suns and Moon, who were shrouded in darkness, were unfamiliar, yet familiar with the new system command. Activate retinal projection. When a green light flashed in front of Three Suns and Moons, Three Suns and Moons saw the sky and the base of the Ironflower Regiment. They also saw the two people who were sizing up Barbados at the side. Pops, sir, I can activate this guy. As if responding to the words of the Three Suns and Moons, the ancient MS that had been sleeping for 300 years slowly took its first step forward. It crossed time and space and took the first step to awaken again. Boom, boom. The huge and ancient steel giant slowly strolled in the base of the Ironflower Regiment, walking along the training ground over and over again. As the walking time increased, Three Suns and Moon seemed to feel that they were more familiar with the control of this ancient mess. Three Suns and Moon, how do you feel? Ray Minkai's voice sounded in Three Suns and Moon's ears. In order to prevent the pilot from being overwhelmed by the huge data flow of the MS when activating the Alea consciousness system, I've used some progressive data release techniques. These techniques can release the next step of data flow as the pilot's control of the MS increases, thus preventing the pilot from being overburdened by the huge data flow and causing accidents. Three Suns and Moon turned his head slightly, feeling that Barbados would also follow his actions and feedback. He could not help but feel a little better. Is that so? That's good. But Three Suns and Moon. Although this gradual release of data reduces the risk of accidents due to the burden of data flow, it will also cause the control of the body to lag behind the original system. For some reason, the moment Ray Minkai said this, Three Suns and Moon suddenly felt that Ray Minkai seemed to be implying something. However, Three Suns and Moon, who rarely used his brain, did not pay much attention to this. After this thought circled around his mind, Three Suns and Moon directly threw it into the depths of his mind, a corner where he did not know where, perhaps, he would never see the light of day again. Is that so? Then is this also training? Instinctively, Three Suns and Moon said the method that he was most familiar with. Yes, training. Ray Minkai responded, a smile appearing on his face. However, Nadi accidentally caught sight of this smile. It was a smile that was mixed with a hint of cunning, joy, and extremely calculative aura. Scary. At this moment, Nadi took 3 steps back. His hands could not help but rub his thick arms. The boss is a little scary. However, Three Suns and Moon, who was in a good mood because of the successful activation of Barbados, did not see this scene. He just casually agreed, like how Akihiro used to come to him for training. Okay, don't you know how to train? Actual combat. That's right, actual combat. I'll use my freak out, you and Barbados to have a simulated battle that is close to actual combat. The moment the breeze rolled up the sand, a gust of wind mixed with sand coincidentally rose into the air not far behind Ray Minkai. It made Nadi, who had retreated a long distance, have the illusion that he was looking at a fox with a sly smile and shaking its legendary 9 tails. Will Three Suns and Moon be fine? I keep feeling that our new boss is going to do something. Nadi shuddered and retreated a great distance until his back was blocked by the cold wall. Only then did he come to a stop. Chapter 676. In the wilderness where the CGS, no, the Ironflower Regiment was located, stood 2 giant steel giants. One of them looked wild and had a certain sense of power as well as a sense of vicissitudes of time. The other one was grayish-black from head to toe. Even though it was folded, it still had a pair of steel wings that were taller than the grayish-black body. Amidst the chilly breeze, youth from all corners of the base gathered in groups of 2s and 3s around the base's gate. They curiously sized up the two MSs. "Pops, what the hell is going on?" Sino, who didn't follow them out, walked out of the base leisurely. After looking at the two steel giants, he looked at the maintenance man with his arms crossed and leaned against the gate. "The boss said he wants to train the piloting ability of the MS for 3 days and a month." "Train?" Sino's eyes widened, but his gaze fell on the ancient MS. Over there, an ancient MS was holding a mace with a long handle and a huge head with at least 8 attack spikes. On the other hand, the familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar grayish-black MS didn't take out any equipment. It just stood there empty-handed, waiting for a certain moment to arrive. "That MS is?" Hearing Sino's question, Nadi scratched his head and carefully recalled the conversation with Ray Minkai. "The body pulled out from the ground here is called Gout the Skeleton Barbados." "Yes, even the mace was the same. As for the grayish-black MS, didn't we see it kill Lars Horn and Gretz with one strike? Its name seems to be Free Gouda." For Sino and the youths around Nadi, the attraction of Barbados, who was pulled out from the ground, was not as powerful as Free Gouda. That pair of gorgeous and colorful light wings, the lightning-like figure, it was still vivid in their minds. 3 days and a month, can you hear me? Ray Minkai didn't care about the discussion between Nadi and Sino. "Oh, got it. Is it really okay for me to use this thing? You don't seem to have any weapons on your side?" 3 days and a month twisted his neck, closed his eyes, and felt the data flow that gradually resonated with his brain, although the feeling of connecting for the first time brought a terrible pain. However, as the number of times they connected increased, the 3 suns and moons seemed to think that they would become a part of Barbados as they sat in the cockpit. Weapons? 3 days and a month. This is the first lesson. Never be confused by the things in front of you, even if Free Gouda leaves its sword and shield behind. The weapons it possesses is still beyond your imagination. As Lame Minkai chuckled, the grayish-black MS that was 100 meters away from Barbados suddenly let out a soft rumble. In the sand and dust, the grayish-black began to change. Traces of color emerged from the grayish-black equipment and quickly spread to Free Gouda's body like ripples. "Change! Change! Change!" Sino screamed and jumped up on the spot. Apart from being surprised, Sino did not forget to reach out his finger and point at the mech that Sino and the other teenagers were familiar with. It was the mech that was instantly defeated by Lars Horn's attack. How? How did it do it? Nadi's body was shaking. His mind was filled with the moment when Free Gouda activated the PS armor. He didn't know, nor did he understand, let alone how to explain this phenomenon to the teenagers around him. The only thing he could do was to be questioned by these teenagers. "Does that mean I can attack now?" As soon as 3 days and a month saw Free Gouda activating the PS armor, they were eager to give it a try. "You want to attack now? Very well." There is no doubt that 3 days and a month's strong aggressiveness was on full display at this moment. But Ray Minkai did not care at all. As a MS, no, as a pilot of Gouda, at certain times, a strong desire to attack was more important than any other emotion. "Come on, 3 days and a month." As soon as Ray Minkai finished speaking, a burst of sand and gravel flew up from where Barbados was standing. As the sand and gravel flew up, Barbados raised the long mace high up in the air. After drawing a sharp arc in the air, he smashed it directly at Free Gouda. Boom! The mace that Barbados smashed down with all his strength hit an object with a loud bang that tore through the breeze. The teenagers standing behind the door were forced to retreat. Some of the teenagers with weaker endurance could not help but cover their ears and retreat further away. Bang! After the loud bang, when the sound of the mace being repelled was heard, Barbados did a backflip and jumped away from Free Gouda, landing dozens of meters away. "You're not holding back at all. 3 days and a month." In the gradually dissipating dust, 3 days and a month noticed that Free Gao Da's arm that should have been injured was unscathed. Was it too light, or did it not hit? The moment these two doubts appeared, they were immediately denied by 3 days and a month later. That means that Free Gao Da's armor is very hard. The sound of the wind suddenly rose. A gust of wind was brought up by the moment Free Gao Da waved his right arm and swept away all the dust surrounding Free Gao Da 3 days and a month. This is a defense system called PS armor. As long as Free Gao Da activates, before the energy is exhausted, this PS armor can provide Free Gao Da with a powerful defense that is immune to all live ammunition attacks. PS armor? What's that? 3 days and a month was stunned. Once again, they habitually did not use their brain to think about the opponent's words. Whatever. Anyway, let's just fight. Barbados waved his mace again and went straight for Free Gao Da. However, this time, Free Gao Da would not stay where he was and wait for Barbados to smash the mace in his hand at him. Ray Minkai wanted to let 3 days and a month experience the powerful defense of the PS armor. That was why he chose to stand where he was and take Barbados' attack head-on. Too slow. In the eyes of Nadi and Sino, Barbados was very fast. So fast that even the highest speed of the mobile engineer could not catch up to him. However, even with such speed, Barbados was still being played around by the even faster Free Gao Da. Although the mace in Barbados' hand was swinging in the wind with a terrifying momentum, it did not hit Free Gao Da at all. 3 days a month, too slow. Faster, faster. Barbados' potential is not limited to this. Free Gao Da was like a ghost as he kept appearing beside Barbados. Sometimes he would raise his palm and give Barbados a hand chop that would not hurt him. From time to time, he would charge in front of Barbados, and then when Barbados swung his mace down, he would dodge to the side and give Barbados a flying kick. This made the three suns and moons very angry, but there was nothing they could do. 3 days and a month. Your movements are too simple. It's fine in terms of land battles, but in the space environment where three-dimensional battles are the main focus, if you only pay attention to the pilot in front of you, you'll only end up dead. Ray Minkai's lecture came through the communication channel as Free Gao Da kept rubbing Barbados against the wilderness, making 3 days and a month very angry. After saying so much, this is my first time piloting Barbados. Subconsciously, 3 days and a month retorted. Unexpectedly, Ray Minkai retorted, "Is that so? However, as far as I know, there are a few people who are able to fight on the battlefield after ascending to the Gundam. You are still too inexperienced." 3 days and a month frowned, but did not continue to speak. However, as he used more strength, Barbados attacks. Resistance became even crazier. "Are you anxious now?" When the steel wings spread out, Free Gao Da quickly retreated a large distance away from Barbados. "Don't even think about running." The wind roared as the mace twisted along with Barbados' body and swept toward Free Gao Da's waist like a thunderstorm. Boom! There was another deafening boom. Under this roar, the people standing by the door could no longer hold on. They all retreated to the back of the door and looked at each other. Huff! Huff! This is too powerful, right? Pops! Would a battle between MS be like this? A few days ago, Lars Horn's MS didn't show such power. Sino wiped the sweat on his forehead. The expression on his face was both lucky and yearning. How would I know? Furthermore, what was that again? P.S. Armor? Nadi tried hard to recall what Ray Minkai said just now. That P.S. armor, it should be a technology that even Lars Horn doesn't have. It might be our new boss's unique technology. Really? Sino looked at Nadi with sparkling eyes. The meaning in his eyes was self-evident. Don't ask me. In the end, this is the boss' personal privacy. Nadi's rejection was straightforward, not giving Sino any chance to take advantage of it. Tisk, every time Barbados waved the mace in his hand, the entire wilderness would be swept up with the sound of wind and thunder. However, the sound of wind and thunder did not allow Barbados to achieve the results he had imagined. Gao Da who was standing in front of Barbados, would always use his palm or arm to block Barbados's mace. Then, he would be kicked and Barbados would fall to the ground. The 36th time you fell to the ground. 3 suns and moon. You need to add some changes to your movements. Although straightforward movements can end the battle in the shortest time possible, when you encounter an experienced pilot, straightforward movements will make you a target for the enemy. What? Ray Minkai's reminder made 3 suns and moon's movements pause for a moment. He seemed to be thinking. However, in the next second, 3 suns and moon, who gave up thinking again, drove Barbados, who was waving his mace, forward again. Virum, different from before this time, what welcomed Barbados was not Gauda's fist, but the low roar of the fire god cannon. Ding, ding, ding. The bullets fired by the fire god cannon in Gauda's head jumped on Barbados' armor wantonly, producing a series of ear-piercing and dense collision sounds. Even though it wouldn't affect Barbados much in a short period of time, the 3 suns and moons chose to avoid the brunt of the attack and abruptly stopped Barbados' charge. How do you feel? 3 suns and moon. So annoying. Ray Minkai's question received a straightforward answer from 3 suns and moon. That's right. 3 suns and moon. The result of overly simple movements will be used by the enemy and become an obstacle that hinders one's mobility. In a flash, Gauda waved his right hand and shot out a beam of light. Virum. There was still a trace of scorching heat in the air. In the eyes of the bystanders, there was still a beam of light left. Sitting in Barbados' cockpit, 3 suns and moon touched the screen in front of them. Their fingers touched the slightly warm screen. It was different from what 3 suns and moon imagined. No, it was different from a certain data stream that was fed back from Alea consciousness. What was that beam of light just now? 3 suns and moon looked at Gauda and the rifle in Gauda's hand. It's just a small toy. You don't need to know. Although he had used it once, Ray Minkai had no intention of exposing the capabilities of the Sirius constellation. Superfluous. This point was ridiculed by State Zero. Ray Minkai did not care about it at all. Small toy? Forget it. 3 suns and moon frowned and then took a deep breath. I lost. Do we continue tomorrow? A satisfied smile appeared on Lei Minkai's face as he admitted defeat without hesitation and challenged him to a duel. Of course. Before we go to the universe, I will train you well. 3 suns and moon August. On the other side, Nadi held his head on the spot and shouted, "It can't be? Again?" Even the preparations this time were so forced. How many more times? What am I supposed to do? Sino spread out his hands and sighed. Dad, accept your fate. If it wasn't for the fact that there was only one mech, I would also want to try it. I feel that would be very cool to sit on it, especially when fighting against that freak out, Sino. You. Nadi was just about to scold Sino when he glanced at the other glaze placed on the empty ground. If it's just piloting, that mech should be able to be successfully activated after installing the Alea consciousness. Really? Sino was surprised. Nadi nodded in a daze, but the next sentence kicked Sino into the abyss of disappointment. But according to the captain's arrangement, that mech seems to be arranged for Akihiro to use. Hearing this, the overjoyed Sino withered like a frosted eggplant. Chapter 677. The simulation training ground for mobile engineers in the past was now occupied by 2 MSs. The mace stirred up the wind. The ancient figure shuttled through the sand and dust that rose high into the air, and the rock-like steel wings that didn't show any signs of being defeated by the ancient figure wielding the mace. Wong! Boom! Sand and dust billowed as the cold steel body shuttled back and forth. Every time the 2 weapons clashed, there would always be a deafening explosion of metal, causing the youths guarding the door to let out a series of exclamations. In the eyes of these youths, perhaps there was nothing that could compare to the powerful visual impact of 2 gigantic steel bodies crazily slaughtering each other. This is Olga and the others, who had just finished signing the guide contract with Orcus, introduced by Toldo, returned to the vicinity of the base and were immediately attracted by the battle that had destroyed the already terrible wilderness. Yo, leader, you're back. Just as Olga and the others were attracted by the battle between Barbados and Frigauda, Sino, with a face full of smiles, jumped out of nowhere and waved at them. Hey, Sino, what is this? Simulation training? Olga frowned and pointed at Barbados, who was just kicked away by Frigauda. He remembered that when they just left the base, Barbados hadn't completed the pre-activation preparations. How could he fight so fiercely with Frigauda now? It was a one-sided fight with Frigauda. Hey, leader, you don't know this. Our new boss. He's very powerful. Sino chuckled and showed off a smile. There were very few situations that could make Olga slightly surprised. Your Excellency, Ray Minkai. Olga was stunned and suddenly recalled the scene when they left and saw Ray Minkai sitting in Barbados' cockpit. He can actually complete the activation of Barbados in such a short time and prepare for battle? Hey, yes, Regiment Commander. Can I discuss something with you? Sino nodded proudly, then moved closer to Olga and said in a low voice, Commander, I want to pilot the 2 Lars Horn MSs that we captured. I wonder if it's possible. At this moment, Olga finally understood. Sino, who could have been waiting for them at the gate, suddenly ran over here and waited for them to return alone. So, it was all for the sake of becoming an MS pilot. Glancing at Sino, Olga nodded. MS pilot? That wasn't a big deal. Originally, those 2 MS were either going to be sold or kept to become one of our combat forces. Also, as long as Sir Ray Minkai's new Alea consciousness system has no problems, it shouldn't be too difficult. Really? That's great. Sino's cheers had just started when it was drowned out by the battle between Barbados and Gouda. There was a warning to alert them of nearby activity, and in front of them was Frigauda with steel wings and terrifying maneuverability. 3 suns and moons licked their dry lips. Is Olga back? Then, this battle simulation should be over. Barbados' right hand paused. Then he swung the mace at the small mound at lightning speed. Instantly, a cloud of dust was swept up by the mace like a small sandstorm. It completely drowned out Frigauda's vision. Oh, trying to steal my vision? Interesting. Looking at the sandstorm that completely covered Frigauda's vision, Ray Minkai chuckled, and his hands were already moving. The roaring propulsion engine instantly exploded with an unparalleled thrust the moment the sandstorm drowned Frigauda, causing Frigauda to rush up from the ground and throw the sandstorm that was swept up by Barbados under his feet. 3 suns and moons plan failed. But how could 3 suns and moons plan be so simple? Got it. The moment the low rumble of the Ahab furnace operating at full power came from the sky, Barbados swung his mace like a divine soldier, descending from the sky and pouncing on Frigauda's head. You really dare to think and do it. 3 suns and moons. Ray Minkai narrowed his eyes and changed his hand movements. Frigauda didn't retreat, but instead charged forward, charging toward Barbados from the sky with a faster and more powerful momentum. Boom! The 2 steel figures exerted force from the sky and the ground at the same time, creating a loud rumble that tore the sky apart. Olga and the others who were closer to the battle retreated and looked at the 2 mechas fighting in the air in horror. That's Frigauda and Barbados? Just as this incredulous question surfaced in his mind, the Freedom Gundam caught hold of an opening in Barbados, who was like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. With a push of its hands, the Freedom Gundam snatched the spiked club from Barbados' hands. Then, with a whip kick, Barbados was kicked down from the sky. Not only did the huge force cause Barbados to sink into the ground, but it also shaved off more than half of the hill that bore the brunt of the impact, leaving behind a terrifying spiderweb-like crack that spread out in all directions with Barbados as the center. 3 suns and moons. Seeing Barbados being kicked down from the sky by Frigauda and unable to get up after a long time, Olga quickly rushed forward and tried to open Barbados' cockpit. Olga, are you back? Don't worry. 3 suns and moons are fine. This level of impact won't cause much damage to Barbados' cockpit. Frigauda, who was slowly descending from the sky, casually threw the mace he took from Barbados on the ground. Your Excellency, was that really a simulated battle? I don't look much different from a real battle. Olga subconsciously raised her gaze and looked at Free Gouda, who was blocking the sunlight. The person who answered this question wasn't Ray Minkai. Instead, it was Three Suns and Moons who opened Barbados' cockpit. Amidst the sound of the cockpit opening, Three Suns and Moon, who were swinging their arms and moving their limbs, first took a look at the Freedom Gundam, then glanced at the mace that was thrown on the ground, and nodded. And this is indeed a simulated battle. Olga, Three Suns and Moons, you? Olga froze for a moment and couldn't help but look at Barbados' armor that was full of scars. Then, she looked at the brightly colored Free Gouda, who didn't have many battle scars on him. This is a one-sided beating, right? Three Suns and Moons didn't care what Olga was thinking. This was a one-sided beating, but it greatly improved Three Suns and Moon's familiarity with Barbados, especially with the help of Ray Minkai and State Zero's adjusted Alea consciousness system. Three Suns and Moons became more familiar with piloting Barbados. The backlash he suffered didn't continue to develop until it was irreversible. Your Excellency, let's call it a day. Olga's back too. Three Suns and Moons looked around and found that there wasn't a single piece of the ground that was undamaged, so he took the initiative to suggest ending the simulated battle. That's good too. Let's call it a day. The MS piloting training targeted at Three Suns and Moons finally came to an end. With the almost cheat-like Alea consciousness system, Three Suns and Moons quickly broke through the various restrictions that Ray Minkai and State Zero had placed on Barbados' system during the intense and intensive simulated battle training. They were able to drive Barbados to battle skillfully. However, Nadi, who was in charge of cleaning up the aftermath, had a headache. The outer armor on Barbados' body that he had painstakingly repaired was damaged during the simulated battle with the Free Gouda. What is this guy trying to do? What a headache! As he spoke, Nadi's gaze involuntarily looked at the black and gray steel giant parked beside Neku. From the previous battle with Barbados, Nadi only had one impression of the black and gray steel giant: mysterious and powerful. He could never imagine what kind of trump card the black and gray steel giant that Ray Minkai called the Free Gouda had. First, it could fly freely in the air. Then, it had the mysterious armor that was immune to all live ammunition attacks, the PS armor. With these two powerful capabilities, Nadi could conclude that the Free Gouda could escape unscathed even if it was besieged by the MS troops sent by Lars Horn. Of course, seeing such a powerful MS appear in front of him, Nadi could not help but be curious. However, this curiosity was insignificant in front of the pure white lion lying in front of the Free Gouda. Whatever. Let's continue to worry about this guy's outer armor. After glancing at the equally mysterious pure white lion, Nadi consciously put away his curiosity and focused all his attention on Barbados' battered outer armor. On the other side, Ray Minkai, who had changed into casual clothes, was invited to the office by Olga. Obviously, this was a meeting for the next action. Your Excellency, although you left everything to me, I still feel the need to report to you. Olga took the tablet from Biscat and handed it to Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai took a look at it and nodded slightly. It seems that Orcus has agreed to be our guide to Earth. The screen showed that the Ironflower Regiment and Orcus had signed a contract to guide the Ironflower Regiment to Earth. Yes, according to the condition of 45% remuneration, this commission was signed in the end. Olga seemed to be relieved. This might be inevitable. As a young man who had never left Mars, he couldn't imagine what it was like to travel in space. Olga's current actions were only based on the suggestions of the people around her. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai casually threw the tablet on the sofa and frowned. Olga couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw this. To be honest, from the moment Ray Minkai invested in the Ironflower Regiment with the financial resources he obtained from Hunter Austin, even if Ray Minkai repeatedly expressed that he had no intention of participating in the daily operations of the Ironflower Regiment, Olga always paid attention to Ray Minkai's actions. She was afraid that she would inadvertently offend Ray Minkai, a major shareholder. Your Excellency, is there a problem? Ray Minkai nodded slowly. Olga, do you think the reward that Orcus asked for is normal? Orcus, the company that signed the guide contract with the Ironflower Regiment, would betray them in the following operation and directly inform the Mars branch of Lars Horn, attempting to use the sacrifice of the Ironflower Regiment as the price to successfully suck up to Lars Horn. And this was something that Olga and the others didn't expect. Even if, before going to Orcus, Olga had repeatedly warned the middleman between the Ironflower Regiment and Orcus to doom Milkanen. After being reminded by Lei Minkai, Olga, who had fallen into silence, quickly thought of something strange. Your Excellency, do you mean that you are suspicious of Tudum Milkanen? Ray Minkai waved his hand, picked up the tablet on the sofa, and returned it to Biscat. Olga, how did Orcus know why the Ironflower Regiment wanted to go to Earth? On Mars, even on the Death Channel to Earth, there are many spaceships going back and forth between Earth and Mars all the time. Ray Minkai held his chin with both hands, looking at Olga's eyes that were hidden under the dart bangs. Why would Orcus ask for such a huge reward? Isn't he afraid that the Ironflower Regiment would choose other guides? Could it be that he knew that the Ironflower Regiment had no other choice from the beginning? Your Excellency, are you saying that there's a mole among us? Biscat hurriedly shouted, but the next moment, he subconsciously covered his mouth with the tablet. A mole? Olga's reaction was slower than Biscat's, but he seemed to have understood Ray Minkai's meaning. Your Excellency, you mean that the mole told Orcus about the Ironflower Regiment from the beginning? After a pause, Olga's sharp eyes flickered under the shadow of the dart bangs. No, it shouldn't be like this. Perhaps, when a mole revealed our situation to Orcus, he also used some means, or directly through Orcus, to contact Lars Horn's Mars branch. If that's the case, then, once the Ironflower Regiment enters space, Lars Horn will... Olga raised his hand to interrupt Biscat's words. The corner of his mouth gradually revealed a trace of understanding. This is exactly what you want, isn't it? Lei Minkai didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it, either. There is no lack of brave people in this universe who dare to challenge the strong. But before that, the Ironflower Regiment must make a name for itself. And the first step to the universe may be to use Orcus as a stepping stone. Chapter 678. After lunch, the Ironflower Regiment's base was still buzzing with activity. However, under this buzzing atmosphere, some people felt extremely cold. It was as if they were in the deep sea and could not move at all. The pure white male lion was lying quietly not far away. The lion's head, which was as big as two Tudum Milkanen, was facing Tudum Milkanen. On this terrifying lion's head, a pair of slightly squinted beast eyes flashed with cold light as it stared at Tudum Milkanen. It would not eat people. However, when this terrifyingly huge male lion stared at him, the fear that erupted from the depths of his genes had already taken over Tudum Milkanen's body that did not have any backbone. He was able to persevere from early morning until now because he knew that the male lion in front of him would not bite him to death. Oh, Regiment Commander! Regiment Commander! What exactly is going on? Tudum's voice that was filled with fear came from the room. The people guarding outside could not help but snicker. Previously, under the guidance of Ray Minkai, Olga and the others naturally identified Tudum Milkanen as the mole. Ray Minkai was not only happy to see this, he even personally convinced State Zero to cooperate with such a big show of intimidation. Your Excellency, I think it's about time. Olga exhaled and looked at Lei Minkai, who was sitting on the edge of the table and typing on his tablet. And it's about time. Ray Minkai looked at the time. It was indeed about time. If he allowed State Zero to continue like this, State Zero's patience would be exhausted by Tudum Milkanen's backbone. Pa! With a snap of his fingers, the huge pure white male lion slowly walked out of the room. That leisurely stroll in the courtyard, that dignified and extraordinary appearance. No matter if it was Olga or the others who saw this pure white lion, They couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "All right, I'll leave this place to you. I'm going to fetch Lakis and the others." Olga nodded and said loudly, "Leave this place to us, Your Highness." Looking at the man and lion leaving, Olga suddenly felt strength surging up from the depths of his body. "All right, everyone, let's show our mole what the consequences of betraying us are." Oh, Ray Minkai didn't care how Olga and the others tormented to-do Milkanen, who was exposed by Ray Minkai in advance. What he was concerned about now was Lux, Gedelia, and the others who had gone to the farm run by Biscat's grandmother, Cherry Pritzel, under the guidance of Triree Moon and Biscat. "Kai, is there anything you care about there?" Ray Minkai and the others had seen the farm from afar when they came to CGS. To be on the safe side, State Zero had tried to sense for signs of life around the farm. In the end, State Zero got an answer that was not worth mentioning. "Yes, it's something I care about." Even though the manager of the farm was an old granny, the things that happened on the farm might cause some changes to their itinerary. For this reason, Ray Minkai had no choice but to go there personally. This was not only to keep track of the development of the situation, but also out of consideration for Lux's safety. Time moved forward according to the original plan. As Lux, Gedelia, and the others started helping out on the farm, a long time had passed. "Miss Lux, Miss Gedelia, you can come over and rest for a while. My grandmother has prepared some refreshments to reward everyone." In the Pritzel family, Biscat's most cherished treasure, Kutch and the twins, Kraka, were loudly calling for everyone to rest. Even though she hadn't been helping out on the farm for long, Gedelia, who didn't have much experience in agriculture, was already panting a little. However, Gedelia, who had just sat down to rest with the help of her maid Fumiton, inadvertently looked at Lux, who was still holding a basket full of food. She couldn't help but feel a little discouraged when she saw Lux, who was still holding a basket full of food and was happily escorted by the twins. Ever since she saw Lux, Gedelia felt an unprecedented sense of defeat. This wasn't a sense of defeat in her career. Instead, it was a sense of defeat as a virtuous lady, be it in terms of appearance, temperament, speech, or even the way she was helping out. Gedelia personally experienced the difference between herself and Lux. "Miss, what's wrong? Are you tired?" Fumiton noticed Gedelia's strange behavior. The maid, who had watched Gedelia grow up, quickly understood Gedelia's thoughts. "Mississippi, actually, you don't have to care about these things. You are you, and Lux Klein is Lux Klein. It seems to me that Miss and her, Lux Klein, do not belong in the same world." Surprisingly, Fumiton, a bystander, was able to point out the unbridgeable gap between Gedelia and Lux. However, Gedelia didn't seem to have heard much of Fumiton's words. "Yes, Fumiton, I know. It's just that." Gedelia nodded. She couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. At the same time, her thumbs were also moving unconsciously. "It's just that there seems to be an attraction on her that I can't resist. It always makes me want to get close to her." Fumiton fell silent. She didn't know how to answer or how to stop Gedelia. "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" After placing the basket in her hands to the side, Lux pulled Kutch and Croc to the side of the table. It was strange. The moment they saw Lakis, the twin sisters seemed to have fallen in love with the extremely amiable Lakis. In just a few words, the twins spent more time around Lux than they did around their older brother, Biscat. This made Biscat, who was always surrounded by his twin sister, feel a sense of loss. "No, Sister Lux's face. Body," the twins spoke one after the other. "There's nothing on Sister Lux's face or body. Is that so?" "Thank you very much, Kutch and Croc." Lux nodded and smiled. She reached out and patted the twins' heads. Then, she coaxed the twins to find Cherry Pretzel and sat down opposite Gedelia. "Gedelia, you seem to have something to say to me?" Going straight to the point, he didn't expect Lux to be so direct as to change the topic. No, don't. Gedelia, who was flustered by Lux's sudden attack, waved her hands repeatedly. Then, she subconsciously looked at her maid, Fumiton. Unexpectedly, Fumiton's face was as paralyzed as usual. It seemed that she couldn't help Gudelia at all. Seeing this, Gudelia couldn't help but feel a little dejected. But in the next second, Gudelia abruptly raised her head and looked at Lakis with a determined gaze. That. Miss Lux, do you think what I'm doing now will be successful? No. This isn't just about success or failure. It's about whether I can make this matter meaningful and give them hope for life again. Them. Lux followed Gudelia's gaze and saw two youths pouring corn from the small baskets, hanging at their waists into larger baskets. They were Tri-Sun Moon, August, and Biscuit Griffin, a youth who didn't hesitate to risk his life and successfully performed 3 Alea surgeries in order to survive. A youth who was willing to become a member of the CGS so that his grandmother and twin sisters could live on. In Gudelia's eyes, these two youths might be one of the roots of her ideals. Lux pondered for a moment and didn't speak. This was because she knew that the ideals of Gudelia, who was called a revolutionary girl by the people of this planet, had a fatal flaw. Even though the path Gudelia insisted on had the idea of greatly increasing the economy of Mars, there was no corresponding protection. Gudelia, your idea is good. However, no matter how beautiful the future is, it's just an illusion in the face of a powerful threat. Lux didn't comment too much on the meeting that made Gudelia famous. Instead, she directly gave a brief comment. Threat. Obviously, Gudelia didn't think of this at all. Was a flaw in her thinking? Or was it deliberately done by the pair of black hands hidden behind the scenes that pushed this revolutionary girl onto the stage? Lux didn't know. However, from the clues she had gathered so far, Gudelia's rise to fame wasn't due to her alone. Instead, there was a powerful force behind her that was secretly pushing for her rise to fame. Yes, threat. Lux nodded and picked up the corn pancake on the plate. Before coming here, I once went to the slums of Chrissy. Over there, a piece of corn cake could sustain a person for 3 days. Can you imagine, when such a piece of corn cake appears in the hands of a skinny young man, what kind of reaction would the hungry people around him have? This question stunned Gudelia. That's right, when she was young. The scene that Gudelia, who once got lost in the slums, quickly recovered in Gudelia's mind with Lux's question. That cruelty, that horror, that scene was like purgatory on Earth. Even after so many years, it was still so clear. Ms. Lux, Gudelia moved her mouth, but she couldn't say any words to defend herself. Oh, you say beautiful words, but you don't have the courage to match them? Gudelia Lana Bernstein, known as the Revolutionary Girl, is just so. Suddenly, an unfamiliar and high-pitched male voice rang out, startling Gudelia out of her reverie. Who are you? Before Gudelia could react, Lakis stood in front of the table and looked warily at the short-haired, black-clothed youth with a faint glow in his eyes. Hee, don't be nervous. I don't have any ill intentions. The young man who suddenly appeared looked around and calmly glanced at the 3 suns and moon and Biscat who were surrounding him. He calmly raised his hands, indicating that he didn't have any ill intentions. In fact, as if to reassure everyone, the young man even said name. If you're still worried, I can sit here and wait for that night to arrive. Night? Biscat and the 3 suns and moon looked at each other, confused. However, Lux already understood that the young man was here for Ray Minkai. Minkai needs some time to get here. Is that so? Then I'll wait. After saying that, the young man sat down on the cornstalk that was spread on the muddy ground, not caring at all about the slightly rising muddy water. Seeing that the young man was indeed waiting for someone, Lux heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she found a reason to call the 3 suns and Biscat back, and put on an expression that said, We're enjoying our afternoon tea, and we'll see how long you'll be sitting on the ground. Seeing this, the young man shrugged his shoulders slightly and closed his eyes. It was only when he heard footsteps stepping on cornstalk fragments that the young man slowly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the sound. Long time no see, Lord Guardian Knight. As the voice fell, the pure white lion suddenly leaped out of the cornfield and landed heavily in front of the young man. A mixture of cornstalk fragments and muddy water instantly splashed high into the air and enveloped the young man. Whoosh! A faint light flashed, and the muddy water that enveloped the young man disappeared, leaving only the young man's bright smile. Long time no see, Lu Lucio. A figure jumped down from the pure white lion's back and stood in front of the young man. Hee hee. Long time no see. Ray Minkai. I didn't expect to see you here. Me too. The two of them, who were both from the same world, actually met again after crossing countless time and space in the present. This made Ray Minkai sigh, but he was also vigilant. Then, since you've appeared here, the battle not too long ago ended under your influence. Then, if you're here, it's because of the meteor shower that appeared on Mars before. As soon as they met, the two of them directly exposed each other's details in the blink of an eye. Are you still looking for Nunnally? It seems that you never lack a pink princess by your side. Lord Guardian Knight. Chapter 679. The cheerful twins shuttled through the cornfield and worked together to deliver the basket they took from Biscat and Mitsuyuki to the side of the road. After pouring the corn inside into a bigger basket, they turned around and ran back the way they came to continue the next round of delivery. On the hillside on the other side of the cornfield, two people were also watching this scene. If Lilina could move freely, I'm afraid she would run as happily as them. Looking at the twins shuttling through the cornfield, Lu Lucio couldn't help but sigh. Why did you leave without saying goodbye? UFFI and the others are worried about you, especially President Miley and the others. Ray Minkai's eyes had a trace of inquiry, which Lu Lucio also saw clearly. When he left without saying goodbye, it did make a lot of people worried. However, when Euphemia ascended the throne of the Britannia Empire, the world had already ushered in a change. This result was acceptable to Lu Lucio. I just want to find Lilina as soon as possible. Lu Lucio slightly restrained his gaze. He didn't want Ray Minkai to discover his thoughts. Besides, after seeing such a world, whether it's UFFI or Cornelia, I'm afraid they'll be too busy to care about other things. What's more, His Excellency Knight, who is supposed to be the right hand of the Empress, is wandering in this strange world. The tit-for-tat that had just subsided quietly came online again. However, Ray Minkai didn't want to continue. That's just an accident. Lu Lucio, just like the person you saw before. That person? The Emperor Lu Lucio, who looked exactly like him but came from a different world and was killed by him? Lu Lucio's eyes flickered slightly. Obviously, he recalled the past when he was robbed by that person. Accident? Perhaps so, but it seems to me that all these accidents are traceable. Ray Minkai. After a while, Lu Lucio's gaze slowly moved and landed on the girls sitting opposite each other in the distance, conversing about certain topics. It seems that Sir Knight has taken a liking to the queen raising game. Ray Minkai frowned slightly, but there was nothing he could do. Oh, I didn't expect you to think so too. State Zero's voice echoed from the side, and Lu Lucio could not help but look over. Lu Lucio's face showed a trace of surprise after looking at it for a while. Lord Holy Lion of the Empire seems to have become much stronger. State Zero shook his head and snorted. Do you think I want that? It's better to do it because a guy. Really? His Excellency Knight is still full of surprises. Lu Lucio's side didn't last long before Ray Minkai's counterattack began. Then what about yours? Lu Lucio. Don't tell me that after you left without saying goodbye, you traveled around the world to look for Linali? Ray Minkai stared at Lu Lucio's expression, trying to see through Lu Lucio's thoughts at the moment. Hee hee, what if I say yes? Before Ray Minkai could refute, Lu Lucio denied his own words. Yes, this is a lie. It's just a lie to a child. Lu Lucio took a few steps back, distanced himself from Ray Minkai and State Zero, and looked back at the valley in the distance. Ray Minkai appeared in the valley in this world, and his gaze was unusually deep. Knight, I'm glad to meet a friend from my hometown in this different world, but it's time for this short meeting to end. Lu Lucio, you're not the only one who's working hard to find Linali. Yes, but it's only meaningful if I search for her myself, isn't it? Lu Lucio took a few steps back again. Okay, let's end this touching meeting. Ray Minkai, Earth has what you want. Don't doubt it. This is a thank you gift for bringing the meteor shower. Thank you gift. In an instant, Lu Lucio's words reminded Ray Minkai of the crystal coffin and the face that appeared in the coffin when he tried his best to escape from the strange space with State Zero. Lu Lucio, your goal is her. Suddenly, a scream broke the silence of the cornfield and attracted Ray Minkai's attention. When Ray Minkai reacted, Lu Lucio's figure had already disappeared, and at the place where Lu Lucio originally stood, a pure white lion appeared. It was State Zero. State Zero raised his head and looked around. His pair of golden eyes were filled with doubt. He's gone. When the scream came, State Zero instantly launched and pounced on Lu Lucio, trying to catch him. In the end, he was still a step too late. Forget it. Lu Lucio dared to appear in front of me. He must be prepared. Now, we've lost the chance to keep him. Let's go back and see what's going on. And it shouldn't be Lux. I can feel that she's fine. Although he gave up on tracking Lu Lucio, State Zero still looked back unwillingly. On the other side of the cornfield, on the muddy road, a group of people were confronting each other. On one side, there were two young men standing beside a grayish-blue sedan. On the other side, there were Mitsu and Biscat, who were protecting Kutcher and Clarka, who were covered in mud. Behind them were Sakura Pritzel and Lux. What headache? Galio, is your neck okay? The golden-haired man nodded slightly to express his apologies and looked at his partner. Cough. It's fine. The purple-haired man coughed a few times and replied with a hoarse voice. But his eyes never left the young man who almost choked him just now, Mitsu August. Sorry, this kid can be very impulsive sometimes, especially when it concerns the people close to him. The old Sakura spoke again and took the initiative to apologize. No, we were careless too. When we passed by this field, we didn't notice the movements on both sides. This incident was indeed caused by us entering this field without permission. I'm very sorry. The golden-haired man's bearing was very good and immediately resolved the tense atmosphere between the two sides. But the purple-haired man who had just caught his breath suddenly went berserk, waving his fist and smashing it towards Mitsu. Unexpectedly, a gust of wind blew, causing countless corn stalks to shatter. Roar! Among the flying corn stalk fragments, a huge and ferocious pure white beast landed on the ground, blowing the purple-haired man back. It was only until the golden-haired man reached out to support him from behind that the purple-haired man managed to stabilize his body. What now? The purple-haired man pulled the cornstalk fragments off his face in anger, but was shocked by the scene in front of him. Lion! A pure white lion? There are lions on Mars too? To the two of them who were born on Earth, the king of the beasts living on the prairie was naturally not unfamiliar. It was just that they didn't expect to see a beast that only existed on Earth on a planet that was at least a few 100 million kilometers away from Earth. Lakis, Mitsu, Biscat, are you guys okay? Amidst the shock, an unfamiliar male voice came from behind the pure white lion. No, we're fine, Your Excellency. It's just that Kutch and Klaka fell. It's not a big deal. The appearance of State Zero gave Biscat a fright, and he hurriedly explained. Otherwise, just by looking at State Zero's ferocious appearance, it was enough to scare an ordinary person out of their wits. Is that so? Ray Minkai and Lakis exchanged glances. After confirming that there was indeed no problem, they walked out from behind State Zero and stood in front of the young man. Sorry, I hope I didn't scare you guys just now. The newly appeared black-haired young man made the two of them show a trace of caution. No, we understand. We can understand. After all, this was an accident that no one wanted to happen. Fortunately, this accident didn't injure anyone. The golden-haired man stepped forward and took the initiative to extend his right hand to Ray Minkai. I'm Achilles Farid. How should I address you? Ray Minkai. Nice to meet you. The moment the two of them shook hands, the two of them tacitly separated. Then, McKillis looked up and sized up State Zero, but under State Zero's warning gaze, he quickly looked away. I didn't expect to see such a majestic lion under Mars. Moreover, I'm afraid that even the king of beasts on Earth can't compare to your lion. How did you transport this lion to Mars? As far as I know, no chamber of commerce would take the risk of stuffing such a huge beast into a spaceship. Galio's attention was almost attracted by State Zero. Even though humans' footsteps had already ventured into deep space, in reality, every space voyage had to go through a strict resource calculation before it could continue. For example, the cost of raising animals, as well as the cumbersome follow-up procedures, could not be carried out in a small spaceship. If it were one or two small cats or dogs, it would be fine, but the lion in front of them was so huge that it was like a small mountain. It was not something that any spaceship could afford to raise. Transported to Mars, Ray Minkai raised his eyebrows, then raised his hand and patted State Zero's thick snow-white mane. State Zero was not transported to Mars. Therefore, from the beginning, it was my partner. Roar. As if responding to Ray Minkai's words, State Zero also let out a threatening growl. All right, Galio, your curiosity ends here. McGillis stopped Galio's next move, then nodded at Ray Minkai, took a step forward, bypassed Ray Minkai and State Zero, and came in front of Kutch and Croc, who were being protected by Biscuit and the three suns and moons. I'm very sorry. I've frightened you. Although it's not very appropriate, I only brought these things with me. I hope these things can make the two lovely ladies feel a little relieved. In the beautifully packaged, transparent bag, there were pieces of candy wrapped in colorful wrapping paper. As soon as it appeared, it attracted the attention of the twins. Thank you. Thus, the storm came to an end. However, before leaving, McGillis turned around and looked at Ray Minkai, as well as Lakis, who had returned to Ray Minkai's side. I didn't expect to see such an outstanding person in this place. I hope we will have a chance to meet again in the future. McGillis paused for a moment, then continued. If there's anything you need, you can directly contact Lars Horn's Mars branch. Just mention my name. As long as it's not too troublesome, I might be able to help. Galio, who was holding the steering wheel, frowned as he looked at the gradually shrinking crowd and the pure white lion in the rearview mirror. In the end, we didn't find anything, apart from that piece of land that has become dilapidated. McGillis's blonde hair was blown by the cold wind from outside the car window, and his gaze gradually became sharp. No, in fact, we've already found out what we wanted to know. McGillis looked at the undulating mud road in front of him and said slowly, There's no doubt that the ruined land is evidence of a large-scale battle that took place a few days ago. Moreover, there should be a militia nearby. Galio, the boy who choked you just now, was a young soldier who installed the Alea consciousness system. As far as I know, on Mars, no. Starting from the Death Channel, the merchants and pirates who are active in the route between Earth and Fire like to use all kinds of means to install the Alea consciousness system on the bodies of those young people and fight for them. Galio suddenly stepped on the brakes, then reluctantly stopped the car by the side of the road. He quickly opened the door, rushed out, and retched while holding onto a stone by the side of the road. Can't accept it? Galio, this is the truth we saw. Galio endured the discomfort caused by his churning stomach. Then he said with an ugly expression, How can I accept it? The act of transplanting foreign objects into the body is simply heresy. It's the proof of impurity. Impurity? Yes. Go back. Galio, the militia that once existed will probably be reborn and set foot in the universe. By then, Mars branchhead Connor will also take action. Then it's our chance. McGillis walked out of the car and turned to look at the direction of the farm. A figure appeared in front of his eyes. Galio, in fact, this is just common sense in this remote area. What's more worthy of our attention is that person, the man who raised the pure white lion. The young man standing in front of the pure white lion would probably be entangled with Lars Horn for a period of time in the future. However, this would have to wait until the newly reborn militia successfully established itself in the universe under his leadership. Only then would it be qualified to become an enemy of Lars Horn. Chapter 680. The long-awaited trip to the universe finally began. Under Olga's arrangement, the partners assigned to the mission boarded the shuttle to the universe. "We are finally leaving." Mississippi Fumiton, who was sitting on the left side of the first-class cabin, looked at Gedelia across the aisle. Gedelia nodded slightly, but her emotions didn't seem to be too early. It seemed like she was affected by the encounter on the farm a few days ago. Fumiton's eyes flickered a few times, but she didn't say anything. She knew that, even if she spoke, the girl who was regarded as the hope of the Martian people wouldn't be able to walk out of the trap in a short period of time. This was because Fumiton was nothing more than a maid from start to finish. Compared to the master and maid who had their own thoughts, Olga, who was sitting in the front, was a bit nervous. The mole was confirmed to be to-do Milkinen. Moreover, after getting information about Orcus from the mole, Olga made a series of arrangements for the mole. But even so, Olga was still not confident. Orcus wasn't a threat to the new Ironflower Regiment. The real threat to the Ironflower Regiment was the mountain behind the Orcus Chamber of Commerce, Olga Lars Horn's Mars branch. While there was still some time before the launch of the shuttle, Olga re-examined his plan in his mind, trying to find the slightest flaw in it. While thinking, Olga couldn't help but look at the two empty seats in front of her. Those were Ray Minkai and Lakis' seats. According to the arrangement, Lay Minkai and Lakis were on the list of people who would be taking the shuttle into space. But on the eve of departure, Ray Minkai changed his mind. He rejected the plan to take the shuttle to space with the Ironflower Regiment and head to the Ark to transfer to the assault transport ship under the Ironflower Regiment's name, Fishing Fire. Olga tried to persuade Ray Minkai, but was rejected again by the resolute Ray Minkai, especially when Olga stated that on Mars, they could only successfully enter space with the shuttle. Ray Minkai's attitude was still firm, and there was even a hint of unquestionable. This gave Olga a headache, but there was nothing he could do. After all, Ray Minkai was not only the client, but also the investor of the Taiwan Group. If it wasn't for Ray Minkai's timely investment, the Ironflower Regiment probably wouldn't even be able to board the shuttle. "Olga, are you thinking about your excellency?" Eugene, who was sitting behind Olga, poked his head out and looked at the pondering commander. Yes, there was some. May I know how Sir Ray Minkai will meet us?" This question obviously couldn't be answered in a short time. That was because the shuttle had been launched. The burden of the instantaneous acceleration caused everyone in the Ironflower Regiment to shut their mouths. They focused on resisting the strong overload caused by the shuttle breaking free from gravity. It wasn't until the shuttle crossed the sky, broke through the shackles of gravity, and successfully entered space that everyone slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Strangely, when the shuttle broke free from gravity, Gedelia, who endured the burden of the overload, actually felt a sense of relief after the shuttle successfully entered space. It was as if the problem that had been bothering her for several days had disappeared without a trace. All that was left was the boundless feeling of facing the boundless space. Next, we just need to enter the low-orbit terminal and wait for the pilot's ship. Fumiton, who was gradually in a better mood, asked Biscat, who was sitting in front of him. "Ah, yes." But just as Biscat responded, Olga, who was sitting in front of him, stood up. "No. Before that, we need to solve some problems." Orcus' ship appeared ahead of time. "What?" Except for Eugene, the rest of the teenagers followed Olga's gaze and looked out of the porthole. On the right side of the shuttle, a dark green-armed transport ship was sailing at a constant speed. "That's Orcus' ship? It's so early." The teenagers were amazed by the client's early arrival, but Olga sighed slightly. "Everything is just as Your Excellency speculated. Biscat, go inform the 3 suns and moons to prepare for attack. Eugene, follow me to the cockpit. We need to speed up the shuttle." Yes." Biscat had to go to the farm to help, so he missed the opportunity to interrogate to-do Milkanen. So he was a bit confused by Olga's order. But he didn't hesitate at all. In his surprise, Biscat clearly saw 3 light spots appear behind Orcus' ship and accelerate toward them. Without a doubt, the 3 light spots were the light emitted by the MS thrusters. "Let's go." "Eugene, We can't stop here. The wind blew. Since the early morning, the wind that lingered around the Ironflower Regiment's base gradually became clamorous. Ironflower Regiment's financial accountant, Dexter Karast, led the remaining teenagers in the Ironflower Regiment's base and stood at the gate. They quietly looked at the body standing on the wasteland. Freak out, it's about time. Commander and the others should have entered space. Dexter looked at the time and muttered to himself. When Ray Minkai refused to take the shuttle into space, Dexter was also there. Like Olga, he couldn't understand and didn't know why Ray Minkai refused to take the only shuttle on Mars that could enter space. But Dexter knew that he was lucky enough to witness the reason why Ray Minkai refused to take the shuttle into space before Olga did. Dexter, did the boss meet up with the commander? The youths standing beside Dexter looked at him curiously. They all knew that Free Gouda could fly, but the teenagers also knew that no matter how fast the MS flew, it couldn't smoothly escape the shackles of gravity without the help of external conditions. Dexter nodded silently in the face of their questions, but he couldn't say anything that could resolve the doubts in their hearts. One had to know that he was also puzzled in his heart. Under the confused gazes of the youths and Dexter, the Freedom Gundam, towering over the wastelands, was in the final stages of its preparations before departure. The energy system is operating normally. The connection is normal. The neural response system is normal. The concentration is within the normal deviation value. Lakis looked at the data displayed on the screen in front of her attentively and reported the various values that Free Gouda currently possessed. As for Ray Minkai, he placed both hands on the control stick and waited for the final moment to arrive. It's about time. As State Zero's voice sounded, a shadow appeared behind Free Gouda, accompanied by a strong wind that swept across the wasteland. It was a beast with faintly discernible edges, and its body was so huge that it could almost be compared to Free Gouda. However, Dexter and the others couldn't see the appearance of this ferocious beast clearly in the wind that was gradually becoming more intense. They could only vaguely sense that something had appeared behind the Freedom Gundam. My preparations here are complete. As the shadow of the beast completely appeared behind Free Gouda, State Zero raised his head and looked at the sky. It's starting over there too. Kai, it's time for us to set off. Okay. Ray Minkai nodded. So Lakis, are you ready? Lakis, who was monitoring the various data of Free Gouda, smiled sweetly, then relaxed her body and leaned into Ray Minkai's embrace. Okay, I'm ready. Her pink hair gently brushed against Ray Minkai's nose. Lakis's laughter sounded clearly. The process of breaking through gravity alone, I believe it will be a very good experience. Ray Minkai laughed loudly. Maybe. Then let's begin. State Zero. Understood. The sound of the wind suddenly became very noisy. In the strong winds that stirred up gusts of sand, Dexter and the others caught a glimpse of the Freedom Gundam breaking through the sandstorm and flying high into the sky through the gaps between their arms that were blocking the sandstorm. They also heard sounds coming from the sky. Dexter and everyone from the Ironflower Regiment, for safety's sake, retreat a little further. Ray Minkai's voice was mixed in the sound of the wind, but it was clearly transmitted to the ears of Dexter and the others. Without hesitation, Dexter immediately pulled the teenagers and retreated into the facility of the base. Okay, the audience has gone far away, State Zero urged repeatedly, as if he couldn't wait for the battle that was happening in the void above them. Radiant Bearer, activate. This was the second time Free Gouda fully activated the Radiant Bearer after obtaining it. The first time it was activated was when he resisted the attack of Genesis. And now, Ray Minkai was trying to rely on the unparalleled acceleration of the Radiant Bearer to break through the gravity of Mars and break through the gravity well alone. With the activation of the Radiant Bearer, Free Gouda's steel wings fell off one by one, and under some kind of power, they gathered into a huge ring behind Free Gouda's back. The moment the ring appeared, lines of patterns that were distributed according to a certain pattern suddenly appeared on the surface of the ring. Even with the appearance of these patterns, similar patterns began to appear on Frigao Da's back, but with some subtle differences. Radiant Bearer. Activation is complete. State 0, it's up to you. The moment the ring was fully activated, Kai's voice was transmitted to State Zero's ears. Then, a thunderous roar resounded above the wasteland that was engulfed by the strong wind. Roar! The moment the roar shook the sky, the wind and sand were torn apart by a light pillar that was filled with electric sparks that shot straight to the sky. Boom! The target of this light pillar was not the sky above the head, but Frigao, who had fully activated the Radiant Bearer. The moment the terrifying light pillar that was burning the wind and sand touched the Radiant Bearer, a dazzling radiance that was even more dazzling than the light pillar, like the arrival of a star, wantonly bloomed its own brilliance above the Martian sky. Boom! The arrival of a star. Thunder rolled. In the torn wind and sand, there were flashes of lightning that were bouncing endlessly, as if it was sending blessings to Frigao, who had broken through the gravity well. Attracted by the thunderous roar, the people who rushed out of the bunker could only stare blankly at the dazzling radiance, the star that broke through the blue sky at an unimaginable speed and disappeared from their sight. In the Martian space, in low orbit, a chase was unfolding fiercely. Under the influence of Mecha, Olga, who knew in advance that Orcus would betray them, made first-hand preparations. Without hesitation, when she discovered Gallahorn's MS, she immediately ordered the 3 suns and moons to attack. She also accelerated the shuttle out of low orbit and flew directly to the coordinates where she would rendezvous with fishing fire. Boom! Boom! The smoothbore cannon in Babado's hand continued to fire shells, trying to attract Lars Horn's MS that was chasing the shuttle. It feels easy to aim. Their movements are not as fast as Frigao does at all. Looking at the accelerating MS in front of her, Triri Moon murmured calmly. Perhaps for other militia organizations, Lars Horn's MS and pilots were at least second-rate or above. However, after being personally trained by Mecha, pressing them to the ground, when faced with the siege of 5 glazes from the Gallahorn branch, 3 suns and moons did not feel the slightest pressure. They seemed to be at ease. Among the 5 glazers, there was naturally a commander glazer personally piloted by Connor Conrad, the head of the Mars branch. With all kinds of calculations in his mind, he would not let go of this great opportunity to keep Gudelia around Mars. If it were not for the fact that Babado's long-range attacks were really difficult to deal with, Conrad would have already chased the shuttle. Damn it, what is going on with this body? Is this the body that killed Crank? The conspicuous small horn on the Commander Glazer's head made Triri Moon pay special attention to its existence. As a result, most of Barbado's attacks were focused on it, much to Connor's annoyance. In desperation, Conrad could only take a step back and command his subordinates to besiege Barbados. Ein, hurry up and attack. This may be the murderer that killed Lieutenant Crank. With this order, the attacks of the Glazers besieging Barbados became even more ferocious, and they practically sealed off all of Barbados' paths of retreat. It was as if they wouldn't stop until one of them died. TSK, are they coming? 3 suns and Moon frowned slightly. She subconsciously glanced at the radar and found that the shuttle had almost run out of the maximum range of the radar. However, behind the shuttle, the armed transport ship of the Orcus Chamber of Commerce was still hot on their tail. What do we do? Olga. In front of her was the Glazer troops that surrounded her and Barbados, and in the distance was the armed transport ship that was chasing after the shuttle. This was the predicament that the Iron Flower Regiment was currently facing. Under the firepower net woven by the Glazers, a ray of light quietly appeared and went straight to the armed transport ship that was chasing after the shuttle. At this moment, whether it was the Glazers or Barbados, their radars all sent out a shrill alarm that a super high-speed object had appeared. This was a ray of light that appeared above the Mars atmosphere without warning. It was also a ray of light that caught everyone off guard, but it caught up with the Orcus armed transport ship in the blink of an eye. It was a ray of light that caused the Orcus armed transport ship to be directly smashed in half and exploded. Chapter 681. In the low-orbit space of Mars, a shuttle was engaged in a fierce chase with an armed transport ship. The shuttle, which lacked defensive equipment, could only frantically escape under the gunfire of the armed transport ship. It tried its best to erupt with all the speed it could muster in order to escape from the gunfire of the armed transport ship. Commander, 3 suns and moon lured away Lars Horn's MS. Biscat looked at the battlefield in the distance that had turned into specks of starlight. He breathed a sigh of relief, but also became nervous. The mission of 3 suns and moon could be seen by anyone with a discerning eye. They lured away Lars Horn's MS regardless of the danger, in order to let the shuttle meet up with Yu Hua in the stationary orbit as soon as possible. I know, but now there are still people biting on our tail and not letting go. Damn it, Orcus! Olga's eyes fiercely stared out of the porthole at the armed transport ship that was wantonly bombarding the shuttle with gunfire in the distance. According to the fragile armor of the shuttle, it couldn't resist the attack of the armed transport ship that was designed and modified for combat. Just one shot. Just one shot. If the transport ship managed to land a hit on the shuttle, then everyone in the shuttle would be sent to the afterlife. It's not time yet. Olga secretly clenched her teeth as she looked at the armed transport ship that was gradually approaching the optimal attack range. This question was not only to ask if her plan was wrong, but also to ask Yu Hua, and even Ray Minkai, who insisted on not going to space with Olga, could appear in time. The answer didn't make Olga wait for long. Just when Orcus's armed transport ship completely occupied the optimal attack position, a light like the light of dawn suddenly appeared in the sky above Mars. It cut through the sky at an extremely fast speed, and with an unstoppable momentum, it rushed into the void and rushed into the battlefield. It also passed through the battlefield where Barbados and Gretz were engaged in an intense battle, smashing apart a Gretz that couldn't react in time. Only the scattered fragments were left, sliding toward the depths of the void or toward the planet below. Only the final brilliance of being burned by the Martian atmosphere was left. It deeply stung Connor's eyes. This was not the last scene of the shocking change that happened in front of Connor's eyes. When Gray's wreckage rolled down, the light that traversed the void had already caught up with the armed transport ship that was chasing the shuttle. Then, the armed transport ship followed the unfortunate fate of the Glaze. The light disappeared in a flash. At the moment when no one knew where it was going, a barely visible trace quietly appeared behind the armed transport ship. The moment it appeared, it was the moment the armed transport ship that had been clinging onto the shuttle was on the brink of death. What? What happened? Just as Orcus, who was satisfied with Connor's answer to his request, imagined wiping out the Ironflower Regiment and Gedelia and making Connor owe him a favor, a frightening tremor suddenly struck and engulfed the entire bridge. Report. Report. Before the subordinate in charge of monitoring the situation of the armed transport ship could finish his sentence, a gust of wind appeared in the bridge without warning. Under Orcus's horrified gaze, the subordinate who was just about to report to him was swept into the vast space by the sudden gust of wind, struggling to walk towards a certain death. What's going on? What the hell is going on? Boom! Orcus, who was holding the seat handle tightly with both hands, tried to stabilize his body so that he wouldn't be sucked into space. At the moment of the explosion, he saw a steel giant above the flames of death. That is MS. It only took the blink of an eye for the crack to appear and the entire armed transport ship to explode. In the explosion of the flames of death, in the shuttle that escaped, Olga and the others were pleasantly surprised. They stared at the free Gauda who appeared on the battlefield while stepping on the flames of death. The dazzling and gorgeous wings of light, the mighty steel body, and the familiar and fierce aura, they were all telling Olga and the others not to worry about what would happen next. Moreover, this was not the only thing that surprised Olga and the others. The armed transport ship, Yu Hua, which had just become the property of the Iron Flower Regiment, finally landed next to the shuttle in the bright flames of death. "We finally made it, Admiral." In the bridge of Yuhua, Akihiro let out a sigh of relief. When he sent a request to Olga to join him, he looked up at the Free Gauda, who was above the flames of death fueled by the armed transport ship of Orcus Chamber of Commerce. Free Gauda? How'd he come to the space? The same question existed in McGillis' mind. Since the beginning of the battle, McGillis, who had accepted Connor's request for support, had decided to observe the battle from the periphery. Therefore, the only one who participated in the battle was Galileo, the military officer of the supervisor. However, in the instant that the brilliance that pierced through the Martian firmament like an unparalleled sword appeared, McGillis knew that the change that would lead this battle to another outcome had finally happened. Report. The coordinate coefficient of the target has been calculated. Oh, release it. Yes, it's just... No one dared to disobey McGillis' order, but the result calculated by the ship's computer was indeed surprising, even unbelievable. What's wrong? After witnessing that kind of light, no matter how strange the calculation result is, I won't be surprised. McGillis wasn't just referring to the light that streaked across the sky. He was referring to the fact that it could smash a glaze into pieces in the blink of an eye and turn a relatively large and powerful armed transport ship of a civilian organization into ashes. His subordinates looked at each other, then transferred the result to the screen in front of McGillis. This is... The moment the result appeared in front of McGillis, an incredulous expression appeared on his handsome face. How is this possible? It actually flew up from the surface of Mars. How is this possible? It's just an MS. It actually, faced with the shocking result calculated by the shipboard computer, McGillis not only stood up abruptly from his seat, but his eyes were also fixed on the screen. He could not see the silhouette clearly, but he could see the gorgeous pair of colorful light wings on the body. What is it? Above the billowing flames, the mysterious and gorgeous ring had already returned to the pair of steel wings that were blooming with gorgeous light. The steel giant with the pair of gorgeous light wings was like a god descending to the world, standing quietly above the flames of death, watching the battlefield. The heat dissipation system is in a supercritical state. Kai, we can't use the radiant bearer for the time being. State Zero, who had been paying attention to the radiant bearer's condition, immediately reported the bad news. I got it. Lei Minkai took a deep breath and calmed himself down from the tiredness brought about by the huge burden of rushing directly from the surface of Mars to this void. Lakis, how are you feeling? Not bad. I just feel a little dizzy. Lakis was not in a good condition. After all, no matter what secrets Lakis had, she could not be compared to Rei Minkai, who was becoming more and more inhuman. Then, let's go to Yuhua first. This scene was naturally discovered by McGillis. Return to the mothership? McGillis frowned slightly. The next second, he found the answer that he thought was most suitable for the situation at hand. Could it be that there's a price to pay for the terrifying performance just now? McGillis could no longer sit still after thinking for a while. I'll leave this mothership in your care. I'll attack now. The light that Gauda transformed into was like the morning light that dispelled the darkness of the night. It cut a hole in the fog in McGillis' heart. It was an empty hole that wanted to be filled with something. What are you? A Leia consciousness system? Or is it Gauda left behind by the sacrificial disaster? Before boarding his beloved machine, McGillis recalled the information that his subordinates had gathered when Barbados fought Greys with Connor and the others. The 72 demons that ended the sacrificial disaster, Gauda's skeleton Barbados. Various descriptions of Barbados appeared in his mind. Apart from the legends, most of them were the light that tore through the void that Gauda transformed into. If that is one of the 72 demons, Barbados Gauda, then who are you? A god above the demon gods? In the distance, the battle between Barbados and Greys had already reached a stalemate. When Connor discovered that Barbados' mobility was far beyond his imagination, he decisively chose to focus on close-range combat and supplement it with long-range attacks to encircle and annihilate Barbados. It had to be said that Connor's strategy was somewhat feasible. Amidst the fierce close-range attacks, the Three Suns and Moon's attention was mostly focused on dealing with Connor's Grey's attacks, thus neglecting the attacks from the surrounding Greys. Every time Barbados was forced back by Connor's Grey's close-range attacks, the other Greys lingering around would always seize the opportunity to launch attacks that flustered the Three Suns and Moons, forcing Barbados into a dangerous situation. So annoying. If it weren't for the effect brought about by the Alea consciousness system, Barbados would have suffered a series of fatal attacks. Don't obstruct me. Damn space rat. With the support of his subordinates, Connor finally seized an opportunity and piloted the love machine from the bottom to the front of Barbados. In the next second, the battle axe in Grey's hand slashed towards Barbados's cockpit. Looking at the flickering cold light in front of them, the Three Suns and Moons who couldn't react in time tensed up. They wanted to use their last bit of strength to break free from this hopeless situation. It's really not surprising at all. Three Suns and Moons, double the training. Radiance. It appeared again. However, this time, the radiance didn't have the unparalleled aura that traversed the sky like before. Instead, it had the heroic spirit of killing all enemies in front of it. Whoa. Connor heard the buzzing sound of metal being cut apart. The moment the words came out of Connor's throat, Connor's eyes fell into boundless darkness like a screen that suddenly went out. The moment the darkness swallowed him, the last impression Connor left on this world was an explosion that resounded through his soul. Boom! A fireball exploded in front of Barbados. It also exploded the spirit of the MS pilots of the Mars branch, Lars Horn and the Mars branch who had followed Connor to tyrannize them for a long time. Commander! The moment a sorrowful cry sounded in the communication channel, a familiar scene appeared in front of everyone's eyes again. The gorgeous wings of light stretched out wantonly. The steel giant, surrounded by light, was like an inviolable god, looking down at the remaining Greys. The pilots of the Mars branch, Lars Horn and the Mars branch, trembled. For a moment, they didn't know if they should be controlled by anger or fear. Among them, Ein, who had yet to fully recover from his injuries, suddenly had an illusion. He saw it. He saw a figure on the body of the insufferably arrogant steel giant, on the gorgeous wings of light. Crank Chan, the veteran who was unsmiling but always took care of him. Is that so? Ein's hands gradually tightened on the control stick, and his face was more and more occupied by anger. Is that so? How could Lieutenant Crank be killed by a young soldier? In the angry words, Ein's Greys suddenly rushed out of the formation and rushed straight towards Frigao de Ein. Come back. Your injuries. When the other pilots saw Ein rushing over alone, they subconsciously followed, trying to provide cover for Ein. However, the moment Greys moved again, Frigauda was faster than them. The dazzling wings of light suddenly dimmed, leaving only the fully extended wings of steel, as well as the increasingly dazzling flames on the back of the Freedom Gundam's legs. Even so, Frigauda's speed was still faster than Grey's. When Ein, who was piloting his Grez to charge at the Freedom Gundam, could only see an afterimage, the two Grez that tried to cooperate with Ein and form a commando formation were cut into several pieces on the spot by several sword rays. Boom! Boom! It was the familiar voice that disappeared in the communication channel, and the icon that was marked as lost on the screen in front of him. He immediately kicked Ein out of the angry sea of fire and fell into the cold cave in the blink of an eye. Ein, quick, quick, run, cha, quick. The last words of the Greys left in this world the moment they were cut into pieces came from the communication channel. You, how dare you? From anger to fear, and stimulated by the last words of his comrades, Ein, who was furious again, did not have time to move. A face with sharp edges and corners, but it brought on a terrifying fear suddenly appeared on the screen. Then, the brilliance sprinkled down. Boom! The Greys that Ein was driving was torn apart on the spot. Chapter 682. In a short period of time, a fully formed Grez squadron was destroyed right in front of his eyes. Galio was stunned on the spot. Even before the battle, as a military officer from Lars Horn headquarters, Galio was very disdainful of this Grez squadron that was stationed in a remote area. But it was undeniable that no matter how weak this squadron was, it was still a part of Lars Horn and represented the combat strength of Lars Horn. In the eyes of ordinary people, the powerful Gjallarhorn MS squadron was easily destroyed as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. This contrast was unacceptable to the son of Bardawin, one of the 7-star families of Lars Horn, who had always stood at the top and looked down on all living things. Galio, don't act rashly. The other side is demonstrating. The moment the strong contrast between reality and perception made Galio take action, McGillis' voice came from the communication channel. Moreover, a purple-blue painted EB-05S Schwalbe Grez arrived beside the purple-blue EB-05S Schwalbe Grez, piloted by Galio. It was McGillis' personal aircraft, the Schwalbe Grez piloted by McGillis. McGillis, you think this is a demonstration? Using an entire Grez squadron and an armed transport ship to demonstrate to us? This is clearly a provocation. Galio's voice was gradually filled with anger. No, Galio, calm down. McGillis' gaze had never left the Freedom Gundam, which had easily annihilated a squadron of Gretz's soldiers. McGillis' right hand gently pinched a strand of his bangs as he pondered and said, Galio, didn't you notice that the gorgeous wings of light are gone? What? Galio was taken aback, but in the next second, he discovered that it was just as McGillis had said. The Freedom Gundam no longer had that pair of extravagant light wings on its back. If it wasn't for McGillis' reminder, Galio probably wouldn't have noticed it, because, even without the wings of light, Frigao Da's speed still refreshed Galio's worldview several times. But even if that's the case, Galio, the other side, doesn't want to fight us. No, it should be said that they don't want to fight against us in Lars Horn headquarters. McGillis shouted to stop Galio's actions. How can that be? He wiped out our Grez squadron and Lars Horn's. Galio couldn't accept McGillis' words. In his eyes, the Frigao Da who wiped out the Grez squadron was undoubtedly an enemy. Kai, those 2 aircrafts are attacking us. Among the wreckage of Grez, the Gundam immediately discovered the movements of the purple Schwalbe Grez, piloted by Galio. Not surprised. Compared to the far-sighted McGillis, the eldest son of the Barwin family, Gario Barwin, was more easily influenced by Lei Mingkai. This wasn't right. After destroying one of Gretz's squadrons, this noble son of a 7-stars family couldn't hold himself back and charged forward. McGillis should have already tried to stop him, right? The Freedom Gundam slowly raised its right hand and pointed its sharp blade at the purple Schwalbe Glaze. 3 suns and moon, return to Yuhua first. Leave this place to me. Understood. 3 suns and moon glanced at the wreckage of Grez squadron and understood the gap between them and Rei Mingkai. Just a moment ago, when they were still locked in a bitter battle with the Grez squadron, the Frigao easily took care of these enemies. As Babados rapidly retreated, the purple Schwalbe Grays charged into the space, filled with Gray's remains. Found you. What a weird-looking MS. The Freedom Gundam didn't dodge or evade. It simply remained in the center of the wreckage like a master waiting for an important guest to arrive. Da-da-da-da. Galio said that anger was inevitable, but Galio more or less listened to McGillis' reminder. The moment he discovered the Frigao Da, the Grez immediately raised the 120mm rifle in his hand and fired continuously, trying to force the Frigao out of the wreckage. The bullets in the 120mm rifle continued to rain down on the wreckage, blocking the attack route and even the Frigao Da. Among the wreckage that was constantly being torn apart, more and more bullets penetrated the wreckage, smashed the wreckage, and directly hit the Frigao Da. However, in the midst of the frantic sparks that symbolized hitting the target, the Frigao Da was unmoved. Like a stone sculpture, He quietly bathed in the barrage of bullets sent by the Grez squadron. No effect. What kind of armor is this? The Grez squadron's rifle can't penetrate the opponent's armor. The appearance of being attacked at will. The armor that is terrifyingly strong. At the same time, the anger that filled Galio's mind was extinguished on the spot, leaving only fear and calmness that gradually gained the upper hand. However, the moment the bullet screen of the purple Schwebel Gritz stopped, the Freedom Gundam also disappeared from the purple Schwebel Gritz's camera. Not good. Where'd he go? Galio, who woke up with a start, found that the Grez squadron had unknowingly entered the wreckage of the Grez squadron. Whether it was in front of him or behind him, the wreckage of the Grez squadron was floating around, greatly obstructing the vision of the Grez squadron. If there is no if, a terrifying and cold aura suddenly descended from the void and enveloped Galio, making him unable to move and lose any possibility of struggling. Dead. Am I going to die? At this moment, Galio seemed to feel the despair when Gritz's squadron was annihilated. Da-da-da-da. Amidst the frightening cold aura, a streak of fire tore through the fog of death enveloping Galio. The purple-blue Schwebel Graze swung its battle axe and chopped down the wreckage that was blocking its path of retreat. It then raised the 120mm rifle in its hand and fired at the wreckage on its right. Da-da-da. Another barrage blew up the wreckage that floated to the right of the purple-blue Grez squadron. In the roaring explosion, under the dazzling light, the purple-blue Schwebel Graze immediately stepped forward, grabbed the purple Schwebel Graze, and ran. Galio, follow. This battle is already over. We don't have to give up our lives for Connor. But Galio's eyes stared at the figure that emerged from the sea of fire. He was unwilling. But what can he do? Let's retreat first. This is not our battlefield. McGillis's eyes were calm. After casually comforting Galio, he threw out all the flashbangs on his machine. Wong. In an instant, the dazzling white light separated the two Grez squadrons from Gao. Are we going to chase? To state zero, a mere flash grenade was not worth mentioning. However, Ray Minkai had no intention of chasing. No. That's enough. This is a demonstration. If we continue to chase after Lars Horn's Inspector from Earth, I'm afraid the rest of the journey won't be easy. Although the two sides didn't have any communication from the shape of the body and the paint, Lei Minkai had already seen through the identity of the pilots of the two Schwebel Grays. McGillis Farid, Galio Barjuan. These two important figures in the future had indeed appeared here. But Ray Minkai's gaze moved away from the dazzling white light and landed on the wreckage floating around Gao. I didn't expect this. Didn't expect what? Do you regret letting them go? State Zero did not understand where Ray Minkai's sigh came from. No, it's just a momentary sigh. Let's go back. The inspector from Lars Horn's headquarters had escaped. Connor Conrad, the head of the Mars branch of Lars Horn, who had been standing on top of the Mars people for a long time, had died and became the sacrifice of the new Iron Flower Regiment to the universe. Anyone who witnessed the battle would find it hard to forget the moment the light appeared and the reversal of the battle. Looking at the wreckage floating quietly in low orbit and being captured by Mars gravity from time to time and falling into the atmosphere, a sigh could be heard from one of the armed transport ships that came to this area. What the hell did I do? I actually agreed to that fat pig's request. White suit, straight long hair, triangular eyes, and a slightly frivolous smile. This was the owner of the armed transport ship that came to this area. At the same time, he was also the leader of Tabins, a transport organization under Divac's name, Nace Tabin. Why? Do you regret it? The person standing next to this famous man was a brown woman with long brown hair. She casually tied up the hem of her red shirt, revealing a devilish figure. She seemed to be happy to see the man in a difficult position. Yes, I'm a little regretful. Amida, you saw the battle just now. No matter how the Iron Flower Regiment got their hands on the MS that appeared at the end was against the rules. That kind of combat power I'm afraid that even Divak's planet doesn't have such a terrifying existence, right? Nace casually picked up the white top hat beside his hand and put it on his head. At the same time, he pressed down the brim of the hat. Under the shadow of the brim of the hat, a trace of regret quietly emerged from his eyes. How did they possess such terrifying combat power? As the most famous transport organization under Divak, Nace believed that there was nothing he had not seen from the Earth's circle to Jupiter's outer circle. However, the final scene of that battle caused my Nace to be extremely shocked. I say, Amida, can we breach the contract? After muttering to himself for a long time, Nace slowly took in a breath. As Nace's assistant, and also his wife, Amida pursed her lips and was momentarily unable to say anything. Because she knew, regardless of whether she did or did not do the commission in her hands, it would affect Tabin's reputation. Nace, why don't know? I've decided. Before Amida finished speaking, Nace raised his right hand to stop her from speaking. He seemed to have an idea. Amida, continue. Let Ravda attack. With 100 refinement speed, he should be able to take the lead and ambush those youths in the shortest amount of time. Amida was silent for a moment, then nodded. Then, the commission would continue. But what would Tabin's fate be? In the instant that he provoked such a terrifying enemy, would Tabin still be able to escape unscathed? The two people who were racking their brains to plan their next move didn't know that when they bit the Iron Flower Regiment's tail from afar, Ray Minkai had already set his eyes on them. Yua's garage was already bustling with activity. With the help of microgravity, groups of 2 or 3 youngsters pushed the parts taken out from the warehouse and floated towards Babados, who was on the left side of Neku. His father, who was floating in front of Babados, summarized the parts and then started to repair Babados. This is really troublesome. Nadi had already lamented this more than once. Since Babados was included in the Iron Flower Regiment's battle sequence, Nadi felt that his brain wasn't enough. While racking his brains, Nadi suddenly saw a pair of figures floating towards the passage on the right side of Neku, in the area where the Free Gouda was parked. This is really convenient. After coming into contact with the Free Gouda more or less, Nadi more or less knew that the Free Gouda didn't need anyone to protect it. Every time they returned from a battle, the Radiance transmitter system that the Free Gouda was equipped with would enter a self-inspection mode and repair the damaged parts of the Gouda. Nadi didn't understand how such a convenient system was created. However, he knew that if Barbados also had such a system, he wouldn't have to be so troubled. He didn't know that the Free Gouda was able to have such a convenient system not because of the Radiance transmitter, but because of State Zero. Otherwise, why would State Zero lie on the Free Gouda for no reason and not move? Lux's nostrils flared a few times, and she frowned slightly. Kai, what do we do next? We don't have a guide to guide this ship to Earth. I'm afraid that Commander Olga and the others are also helpless. Lei Minkai shook his head slightly and sniffed slightly. His brows furrowed as well. No, this isn't anything. The problem of the guide would soon be solved. But now, we have a more important problem to solve. A more important problem? Lux blinked her eyes, as if she didn't react. Yes, it was about time for Olga to gather his men and clean up the transport ship. Otherwise, we will have to endure for half a year on this ship. Kai, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.